What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another incredible episode of Boots and Shoots Unfiltered. Today we're gonna focus on our battlefield discussions episodes, and today we have a special. Like, I've been waiting for this one forever. These two guys here that you see were a command team together for the Red Falcons, and I had the privilege to serve under these two in combat, and it was one of the most fun and hard times of my life. So we're going to talk about the unit, we're going to talk about them, and we're going to turn it over to them and let them talk about it. But for you two, I really appreciate you guys coming on here, and I know it wasn't easy to sit here and talk with me and Chris for a little bit and just talk about Task Force Falcon, talk about your guys' relationships and as a command team and all that kind of stuff. So thank you so much. And this is going to be a good one. And this is the ones that, this is the first time that I think we've really told the story about Task Force Falcon besides Keith Benoit. He talked a little bit about it, but this is going to be, for us, all three of us on here, it's a little nerve-wracking. But it's going to be good. So, Chris, you got any opening comments?
Hey, I just want to thank y'all for coming on. I know it's been a long time coming. We've had a lot of people asking for this, and I'm excited for it. Before we get too deep, I do want to thank some of our partners out there. So again, Chosen Flags. If you are looking to get a flag designed or made, if you're looking to get a flagpole installed, call up Ski up there in Watertown. He delivers all over the U.S. Also want to give a shout out to Ryan Hendrickson, doing great things with Tip of the Spear landmine removal out in Ukraine. Our friends up at the New England Battalion who are working through some veteran help with their hockey league up there. And then for all of you gentlemen out there or ladies that might be going a little thin up top, right, as we get older and we start getting out, we start losing some of that hair with it. Check out Warrior's Crown out there, another veteran-owned business. So with that said, I'm going to kick it over to you guys. Let's hear some stories.
Well, awesome. Hey, first I just want to say thanks up front for not just having us on, but just for doing this in general. I mean, I listened to a couple of your podcasts. I think it's great that you're getting people on here to tell their stories, and I know you've had some fairly tough sets of stories that have been, that you're trying to get ground truth kind of commentary from folks. So I think that's amazing. And I think it's going to pay like big dividends, like well into the future, so just super proud of both you guys for doing this stuff. Not like I can have any right to be proud of either of you. I just think it's awesome. So that's all I wanted to say. And I'll pass it over to Kevin real quick if he's got anything you want to say real fast.
Yeah, no, kind of echo what you said, man. I can say this with confidence. I'm pretty proud of Jerry and how you guys teamed up and were able to kind of come up with this concept to get after like the conventional side of this fight. The soft side is we get inundated with that on a daily basis. If you listen to any podcast, me personally, I don't listen to any podcast. The only podcast I really listen to are Ninjas and Butterflies because it's conspiracy stuff, and I love that stuff. So, but I have been listening to some of your stuff, and I really appreciate the opportunity to get after it.
Yeah, thanks. This is. I mean, again, I can't. You two are legends to me, and other guys within that served under feel the same. So I mean, the whole week we've had guys texting me about when is this coming out? When is this? They just want to hear it and hear the story told. But the Task Force Falcon, man, it was something that means a lot to me. It was something that hasn't really been told. It was I think it was 06 to 08, right? And I'm going to just turn it over to you. You guys can briefly describe what it was and how it started and, where it kind of went and, a little bit more. Just run it over to y'all.
Yeah. Well, in general, Task Force Falcon was kind of like the brainchild. I think a guy named Colonel Larry Swift and General McChrystal. I don't want to, if I got that wrong, apologize to whoever did come up with it. But bottom line, they came up with like a targeting kind of generated, started this. The find, fix, finish, exploit, reattack kind of methodology, started with them, and they were, looking to fill a gap, right, in the counterinsurgency fight. We looked at it as like, hey, there's like a big swamp out there full of insurgents, and the conventional forces are trying to do stuff about it, but it's like it's like having like a bunch of dudes with a dragnet trying to drag it through, and all the stuff that all the bad invasive species that we're trying to take care of were just kind of getting away because they were just too easy to see and avoid, from an insurgent standpoint. And then you had like some of the special operations folks, and they were kind of like spearfishing folks out of this. But it's an invasive species, right? You got to get rid of it. So it kind of came up with this plan of taking an airborne battalion and dropping it into some of these sanctuaries and disrupt them. And to really, one, it helps targeting on for the spearfishers. It also helped create some breathing room for our conventional brothers, and it just really filled that kind of gap. And we kind of looked at it ourselves as kind of like introducing the predator into the swamp that just eats insurgents, and they trained us to be that predator, and it allowed them and allowed everybody to just be a little bit more effective. And so the way they organized it was they took a brigade in the 82nd, 2nd Brigade 82nd. We just finished, first battalion just came back from the second tour to Iraq in like 18 months or something like that, where they did the ground war. They came back, they did elections in 2004, and then they went and helped with Masters and Telefar in 2005. I'm sorry, I was 2nd battalion. 1st battalion just came back from Afghanistan. I spent about 5 months doing elections in Afghanistan, and then they came back and got stuck in the R4 gen cycle. So they, a lot of NCOs and leaders moved on to do, developmental jobs and stuff like that. But it was an opportunity to kind of say, hey, we want to take this brigade that just transformed to modularity, and 2 infantry battalions and the Cav Squadron just came back off the deployment, and we're going to change the task organization so you have like a Cav troop and 2 infantry companies in 3 equal task forces, right? And so Red Falcons were the first out the door, which was really our parent headquarters, but we got reorganized to the Cav troop, which was second in the door to go out. And I guess the best way to describe it would be like, we're going to do 4 months in perpetuity. 4 months for these 3 task forces in perpetuity was kind of the plan. And what was interesting for me was, we were able to get a training cycle with our parent organization, Red Falcons, and then we got reorganized under Gray Falcons, the Cav troop, and we got another training cycle.
Cav Squadron, man.
Cav Squadron, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Thank you. Hey, man, this is like my first podcast. So
Hey.
You're doing good. You're doing good.
I'll first start doing first on things.
So anyway, Kevin, that's when me and Kevin kind of connected. Was, I had a first sergeant. He moved on. Had somebody standing in. I think Noe Garcia was standing in for a little bit. One of my platoon sergeants who just came off of being in the Ranger Regiment. Ranger training brigade for like 6 years. So he hadn't been in the war yet, and then, but we reorganized and got Kevin over. And I think, was that your 3rd company or 2nd?
It was technically my 3rd, but I mean, technically it was my 2nd. I had done some active first sergeant time over in Delta, 3rd at 325.
Yeah.
And
sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, then I moved over to when they brought the RISTA in and they did that whole conglomeration that basically all the battalions through their chapters and all those guys at the RISTA. Sergeant Major Knock pulled me out of that position because there was an incoming first sergeant coming in and made me the first sergeant of Bravo Troop 173. And then I stayed there for a while the RISTA was forming up. And then I think Sergeant Major kind of had an idea that this mission set was coming down the pipe. And that's when he moved me. At the time, Sergeant Major Knock was the brigade sergeant major. So like that guy I had served with he was my first platoon sergeant. He was my first sergeant. He was my battalion ops sergeant major. He was my battalion sergeant major, and then he was my brigade sergeant major. Like he kept pulling me back in, and to be honest with you, I'm really glad of it because he helped me to get to where I was in my career, and he's just a great guy. But I think he had a feeling of that, and then he wanted to just push me over to for the mission set coming down. I'm sure him and the boss had some kind of idea something was coming at that point, and then moved me over to you guys, and I think it was First Sergeant Painter that I was replacing.
Yeah,
So
there's
now, if I can real quick, James.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So you mentioned having the idea of introducing, and I love the way you said it, introducing a predator into that mix, right? So presumably, are you saying that you had this mission going in so that when you and Kevin link up, y'all know already that y'all are going to kind of be this task force, or is this something you find out later?
Yeah.
We found out later because we did that because when I came in and we were doing regular, company sticks lanes at that point.
Yeah. Because I was in Alpha Company. I wasn't over with these guys yet, Chris, but I don't remember knowing what the fuck I was getting into. I thought I was just going to a regular, and I think I was only a staff sergeant at the time, but I thought I was just going to a regular deployment.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what that consisted of until I got the Speicher.
Yeah, because I would say like probably that first like 4 months of 06 was when they had, I just took over like January of 06. So I just took the guide on. They came back from Afghanistan. Mike McDermott passed it off. He took HUC. And so I started in that January. And I think we started another training cycle because we knew something was coming that summer. Didn't know what. It's just the pattern, and I think we started probably March. We started another training cycle to kind of spin up towards this, towards something. And then I'd say probably around April, May, I think is when we kind of got the real word that, in August, they're going to send the first task force to do this mission.
Yep.
Okay.
And so, they did their first 4-month rotation from August to like November. Maybe it was like late July to basically mid-November. And we deployed right after Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Okay.
In 2006. What was supposed to be a 4-month deployment. But it was, during that time, and I mean, we were, we had started a really good training cycle. I mean, it's 82nd, but you got to think about the time frame. It was like, Army was having a hard time recruiting, and it was that time frame where they were letting people felons and, all kinds of problem children. So, when Kevin says he was getting a lot of the chapter cases, I mean, Kevin was a chapter machine over in the Cav Squadron. He came over to our company, and it was like we got probably, from January to April, probably 60 new people.
Yeah.
And I think 2-3 months later, probably 10 were still there.
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, it was an incredible pace. And Kevin, having spent time throughout the brigade, like when he came in, he just started like gobbling up talent from as much talent as he, really wasn't a lot, but it was like key people, that paid huge dividends down the road. And then, and as we got them, we started our next training cycle with the Cav Squadron, and but we were also getting feedback from the folks that just deployed. So we're taking real-time AAR type stuff and incorporating it right into our training cycle. So squad sticks, platoon sticks, company sticks, JRT, even a JRTC rotation. I think we did around, what was it, the end of August maybe?
Yeah, it was right, but it was like right before we deployed.
Yeah, which was good. But I mean, we watched the Red Falcon headquarters make a lot of, have a lot of hard lessons learned. You know what I mean, on their first rotation through it, everything, because the mission, was to really go tackle the enemy sanctuaries. And so, if you were in Iraq during that time frame in 2006, like the conventional forces were kind of fixed, and so they'd have outposts, but you could only go you only had a little bit of buffer around those outposts, and then you get like what we call the enemy disruption zone. Okay, and so they would, IED belts, ambushes, things like that complex, BBID that were on demand to kind of go, and once you did try to penetrate the IED belt, here comes a BBID down your throat. That type of scenario was happening all around the major population hubs and bases that we actually had secured. So that's what they were doing. The soft folks had, they had all the air assets in the world, and it allowed them to basically go where they wanted, when they wanted, because they had tremendous amount of assets supporting them to do that, but they didn't have a lot of staying power, right? Like you go in there with a small team, on, in a couple helicopters. I mean, how long can you stay? I mean, we've all seen Black Hawk Down. I don't think there was ever any scenarios like that playing out in Iraq. during that time frame, but you still didn't want to stay on the ground a long time with a small number of folks. So bad things just start happening. And so when you start dropping an entire, like you drop a full infantry company or an entire infantry battalion or task force like what we had on there, it has a lot of staying power. I mean, you know, everybody's humping in water, you're pushing pallets of water off the ramp. These are all things we learned from our predecessors. You know, everybody, we're dragging body bags full of water, resupply the next day. Here comes another big couple pallets worth of water off the aircraft because it was hot. You know, and you're pumping everywhere you go once you land. And,
yeah, can I add to that real quick, James? And two, like not only were we getting the ARs coming back from like the battalion level and all that kind of stuff, but like literally, we had real time feedback from the AWG guys that were on the ground, and those guys really helped shape. Like in our initial train up, we were real heavy on battle drill 6, and enter and clear. Let's go in and kick these guys in the face, shoot them in the heart, that kind of stuff. And then they brought in some new tactics and TTPs that really proved invaluable, and which I think really helped us keep a lot of our troops alive. And I'm just real thankful for that experience of having those guys on the ground with us through both the pre-deployment portion of it, through the training portion of it, and then during the majority of the actual deployment. Just wanted to add that in.
Hey, Kevin, can you just say can you just say what that is though? Like, what is, for some of you don't know what AWG is? Like,
it's the shirt he's wearing right now.
In that hat. So I retired out of it as a sergeant major. I just got our lead guy at the time was Sergeant Major Mike Ackridge, and he kind of embedded in with us. And him, we had Gene Chiswick. Gosh, I'm drawing a blank on our Ray Brooks. Those guys stayed with us pretty much the entire time. Yeah. But so asymmetric warfare group is what it was, and really what the mission was to be able to spread good, valuable TTPs throughout the force, not just so like they would take some SOCOM soft TTPs that were working and bring them down to conventional forces, and conversely, they would take some of the stuff like we were doing on Falcon and pushing that towards soft throughout the joint endeavor. Even reaching into like the British SAS and stuff like that as well. So
trying to get that real-time feedback loop going. That was one of the main things that AWG brought to the fight, right? Was they were going out to Iraq, they were going to Afghanistan, eventually they would go to Ukraine, bring those lessons learned back and try to get them right back as quick as possible into the force.
Yeah. And that actual effect of what they did really helped offset the loss of experience and stuff from those folks that just left your unit. You just lost all your E7s, E6s, a lot of your E5s to recruiting, TRADOC, to the trail or RTB or whatever, and so I had NCOs that were coming in out of the generating force that have been drill sergeants, ranger instructors, and stuff like that had never zeroed a weapon with a optic at night.
Yep.
Or with a laser. Didn't know how to do it. They were doing it wrong. I had the fortunate benefit of being in the Ranger Regiment where they were figuring out that stuff a long time ago. And being able to see how much experience and understanding that the NCOs there had, and how much. They did a quarterly or semi-annual marksmanship conference where they brought every E7 and above together to just talk about marksmanship. And to get some NCOs, and they're great NCOs, but they just were never exposed to it. And you know what I mean? It's just, and then so you bring in some folks from AWG, and they just kind of bridge that gap for you.
It's a little funny story on that. So and you might remember this, James. So in comes Mike Ackridge. He's in uniform, and then Ray Brooks, he's not, and they introduce themselves. This is the first time I meet him, and they're like, "Hey, First Sergeant, hey, this is what we are. This is what we do." They're really kind of I wouldn't say they were smoke and mirrors, but it didn't seem right. But the crux of that conversation was they were like, "Hey, we got this marksmanship program, and we want to take your guys out and let them shoot and kind of teach them some marksmanship stuff." And I looked at Mike Ackridge, and I was like, hey, Sergeant Major, I'm a fucking first sergeant. I can teach my own guys how to fucking shoot. And I don't know if freaking James had heard that, but like after they left, you came into our office. It's like, hey, man, hey, we're gonna do this. This is real good. I was like, and I pushed back on it a little bit, and then finally, I kind of pouted for like 2 or 3 days, and I went out there and watched the guys and saw how they were loving it and how much they were learning. And I was like, oh God, man, I was an idiot for not wanting to do this,
Yeah.
but
I'll tell
it
you,
was
man,
really good.
I tell you, that set the tone, man, for us, because I think we were a learning organization, Chris, through this whole deployment. Like
Awesome.
there was stuff that we had to adapt to because we're conventional infantry, we're conventional this, but we learned how to navigate through, the IED belts. We learned how to do tactical call out. We learned how to do all these things, and we're adaptive. And AWG set that tone for us going into this deployment,
Nice.
man.
Yeah.
So that's just my opinion on that.
No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, Jerry. And it was humbling. You have these gentlemen come in with a wealth of knowledge and experience, and they approached it. There wasn't like, listen to us, we know everything. They just, I mean, they broke it down in a way that made it easy to learn. They made it empowering for the NCOs that were learning it. They were teaching them how to train other people to do it while they were teaching them how to do it. And so when we got like our company, because we got 2 training cycles, we get the benefit of doing it twice. And
Nice.
so the second time I'm sending the first time it was like platoon sergeants and squad leaders, maybe not even all of them, because we only had so many spots. Second time I'm sending like team leaders, as many team leaders as I could squeeze in there and cheat, beg, borrow, steal, show up anyway, in case somebody didn't make it that day, kind of thing, because you just see the growth. And once those NCOs learned that they can master something like marksmanship, then it was easy for them to move on to other things. And that allowed me and Kevin to take some of these young, promising NCOs and send them to all these other things that we knew would be hugely impactful during this mission. We were sending folks to EMT school, to make them, somebody like a medical expert per platoon.
Yeah.
Sending people to demo training. So we'd have a demo expert outside our engineers per platoon. Squad does any marksmanship type stuff. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, but I mean, it was like it helped them, gave them the confidence as an NCO that perhaps maybe they didn't get from ANOC or BNOC or PLDC or whatever at the time, warrior leader course, whatever you want to call it, and then once they figured that out and they realized that they had these sources of information that they could learn things, master things, teach things, it made it very easy for me and Kevin to introduce new stuff. And say, hey, here's what's come in. What do you guys think? How are we going to incorporate this into how we operate? And as we build our SOPs and things like that, it went quicker than just about any other place I've seen before or since.
That was actually one of the things that amazed me when I got to the company. It was like, how good the daggone NCO Corps was already, and how sharp they were, and then how challenging they were. So they challenged my thought processes in a good way. I mean, like, shoot, freaking Whips, Gonzo, freaking Jimmy, freaking Cox, like all those guys were they were real smart, real bright, and they challenged authority in a good way, not in a bad military discipline type of way, but they challenged authority in a good way so that they wanted to make sure that we were growing along with them. And I know that sounds a little corny, but it meant something, and it mattered, because those junior NCOs, the E5s and E6s, really throughout their duration of that deployment were, in my opinion, really the glue. They truly were the backbone of the Army. So sorry, I had to do my prolix here.
I agree on that one too, guys, because just a little situational awareness too, Chris, but I didn't want to cut you off. Apologize.
No, you're good.
Like prior to this, all the units that went to deployment were in armored vehicles, man. Like they'd roll around in MRAPs and Humvees and stuff like that. So like, James and Kevin had to take, we had to start learning fieldcraft again. Like you had to start learning how to patrol. You used to have to start like, how do you conduct resupply? Like how do you do LZ operations? Like the rest of the force got away from that, man. Like they were hey, it's daily patrol, go get in the Humvee and drive around the Baghdad sector and then come back. Like we were asking a lot of the NCOs, and I think for me, I got to the deployment midway through, but the NCOs in that company were just the guys that you'd want to go to war with. That's like what Kevin was saying. So they were just aggressive and smart.
Yeah, so that's a great point, right? Earlier, I think it was Kevin that mentioned it, but James or Kevin, you talk about. I had a similar issue when I took over Chosen Company in between my 2 Afghanistan deployments, where right, wrong, and different, we had to chapter a lot of people out, and it was rough. But we were able to identify good people and bring them in to help rebuild that team quickly. You talked about, actually, I think it was James that mentioned it. What was the thought process as, you're having to, for lack of a better term and not to be heartless, you're cutting some of that dead weight off, right? But you're creating a gap now. How are you identifying? What are you looking at? Because you already kind of know the mission set that you're going on now. What is it that you're looking for in those NCOs that you said, yep, Jerry, he's one that I want to get over here, or whoever?
LGOP. Like I honestly, in my personal opinion, when once we got there, my whole thing when I was in the 82nd, I believe in the premise of LGOPs, little groups of paratroopers, decentralized command, being able to get out there, get after a mission set because they know what the plan is, they're armed to the teeth. That whole real cool thing that is. But the reality of it is if you have good, strong NCO leadership. And I'm talking junior NCO leadership. Platoon sergeants are important; they're very important. But the squad leaders and the team leaders, they're critical. And I really feel like that we hit the jackpot with that, James. Like with the cats that we had. That was my opinion. So I'll defer to you, James.
And I'll be honest, there was folks that had, I had a platoon sergeant, prior to Kevin showing up that. I could tell he was just nervous about the deployment. He saw what it was going to take, and he had some close calls on his previous deployment. And I'm like, it's like you kind of get that sensing. And I went and had the conversation with him, and I don't know. I'm just really good about not snipping these things out. That sounds like it's negative. It's just like understanding the humans that I'm working with, and being able to say, hey, man, I get it. Like. There's a ton of jobs on staff right now that could use your experience and expertise, or would you rather go to, help one of them go to ROTC? I helped one, to go help with cadets, just take a break because his marriage is falling apart. I helped one go to the 3 shop because he just didn't want to be on the front lines, but he didn't want to sell out the unit either, and I mean, so it's like you help people move on to get the people in that want to be there and that are, eager to do the part, that are capable, that type of thing. I mean, it wasn't personal ever.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It was just, but it's like, I grew up hearing stories about, General Abizaid, where how he used to train his Ranger company before they jumped into Grenada. And it was kind of like, they went through a lot of people to get down to, and they only had the strength was like 130 or whatever, but I think they had 89 folks when they jumped in, but they're like, you could look left and right and you knew you could count on every one of those motherfuckers. You know what I mean? Like they were that badass, you know what I mean? And so in my mind, I'm like, and I'm talking to my peers across the Army, they're going through the same, whether it was 1st Cav Division, my one of my best friends, Will Anger, was taking bottles out to the field to do urinalysis and catching people 50% catch rate, and just he chaptered 180% of his company.
Yeah.
But when he went back as a company commander, after a 12-month break, on staff, from being on staff, he had a great, and so, and then Kevin shows up with bloody. I mean, we had a kid that showed up on a Friday because 16-year-old wife tuned him up with the frying pan over the weekend. I think by next Friday he was gone. Failure to adapt, I think, was the chapter. Kevin. I mean, and Kevin. I mean, it was Kevin was like he knew all the legal guys, he knew all the medical guys. They saw him coming, they knew he'd have his paperwork straight, that he was an easy win, and he just moved people along. And it wasn't personal. It was just man, we had a mission, and we got after it. So, and not to get, this is an important part of the conversation, though.
Sure.
It really, and I didn't want to gloss over, yeah, we win, and then now we're in the war. This is important because when we did deploy, you really could look across the formation and be like, man, I can count every one of these folks. And there were some folks that people would look at, you really want that guy? He looks a little away, thinking that dude's got a heart of a lion.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Hey James, too, looking at the cohesion with the other companies too, did you guys, I wasn't at your guys' level all the time, but did you guys have a lot of interaction with the other company command teams that were coming to the op mission? Because we were not.
Yeah.
It was a like everybody rolled in. Like as you know, we had like my company from Alpha,
Yeah.
7325, and you guys and all that. Like,
Yep.
did you guys have a lot of conversations with those guys prior to deploying?
We did, and everybody was in a little bit of a different situation. You know,
Yeah.
like Alpha Company, White Falcons just, you know, they just came off another deployment supporting elections. They were like 3 months behind us in the R4 Gen cycle. So as we're going into the training cycle to get ready for this deployment, they're still getting new people in to fill gaps. You know, still getting them through, you know, just qualified on their weapons and stuff. And we're moving out like doing team and squad live fires and things like that. So like they're a little bit behind. And then you had Alpha Troop, who, you know, Kevin will tell you, like, you know, they started off building the 3 CAS squadrons for the division. You know, Papas took like the all-stars from 573, and then you got down to 373, you know, and they had, you know, and then that, like, when it got down to 173, it was like, okay, here's all the, I have lots of terms I could use when I'm trying to keep it PG. And maybe
Here's everybody else.
But I mean, there was some, you know, they were riding the struggle bus. And so, you know, Foster had you know, Alpha Company had a whole different problem than what me or Matt had, you know, and so, you know, trying to stand up a whole company, you know, get at the weapons, the optics, and all the things, because it wasn't like they converted an infantry battalion. No, because that infantry battalion went to make another brigade, a whole other brigade. 3rd battalion, you know, went to go help make another brigade. This was like they're getting from ground up. They started like an arms room and like 2 people at some point, you know, and then just people that started showing up. So they, you know, so like as we went, you know, we were having these conversations, but we're all kind of a little bit slightly different place, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I knew pretty much I knew the whole staff and the command team over at for the squadron, and I knew the troop commanders and the troop first sergeants because I had literally just come from there like 7 months ago or however long it was. So I had a really good relationship with most of those guys, and then like Meisner and I and, you know, Adamczyk, we all meshed real well pretty quickly. You know, I mean, normal outside of the normal freaking infantry company dick checking each other type of stuff. You know, the professional relationship was definitely there, and I think the mutual respect and admiration was also there.
Yeah, and you know, Matt Adamczyk and I were like, you know, we were pranking each other all the time, like throughout this whole thing. You know, like I was supposed to take Alpha Company at one point. Because I was, you know, my mentor, you know, long story short was my mentor was like, hey, they're putting dudes like 4 years junior to you in command right now. And I'm sitting at 1st Cav with a refrat in, meaning I was going to get out of the Army because I had like a 2-year queue to take a command there. So they convinced me to come to Bragg, and I thought I was going to take ACO, and then Matt Adamczyk took it, and even though he'd, you know, been a captain for about a minute and a half. And then I was going to go to Delta Company, Delta Company White Falcons from Joe Blanton, who was my office mate in 1st Ranger Battalion. And I was like, so I'm talking about him, about inventory. That didn't happen. And then somehow I ended up with Charlie Company, you know, and it was destiny for me. Like, I'll talk more about that later, but it was just crazy how I fought and did all these things and ended up exactly where I needed to be. I felt like.
Could you imagine having a company without me being your first sergeant, sir?
No. I mean, honestly, like, you know, it made it just like made my life easy, brother.
It's just crazy, man. Like looking back on it, like every company going into this thing, like every company had their personalities. Like everybody was, all the command teams across that that battalion were different. They were just different people. They operated the same, but they didn't. They had different ways of doing things. They, you know, different styles of leadership. But somehow, man, it just all came together and worked. Like it really did. It worked. So
Mark Lastoria and I were like our lieutenants together in NOSLAC in 101st, 2nd 327. You know, back in '99. Like we were both company XOs, like just running the battalion kind of thing, and. I didn't know Foster until I got there, or you know, the eco commander, and it was just, but you know, they're all good people. I think that mattered. Colonel Davidson, you know, the squadron commander, he was the Brigade 3 for 2nd Brigade 10th Mountain that backfilled us in Western Baghdad when I was in 2nd Brigade 1st Cav. You know, him and General Milley showed up, you know, with Colonel Milley at the time, and they stirred some things up in Cavland. It was pretty impressive. But I knew him from that, just a little bit about that, and he was honestly like lieutenants with Dave Anders, who was the Red Falcon commander before Colonel Richardson took over. They were lieutenants together in Korea back in the day. Him, those two, in the 504 commander role, like three like best friends in Korea. So it's like, you know, there's some embeddedness there, but like, you know, so I was a known entity to him through, you know, Colonel Anders, you know, and he's like, I picked James, you know, from Red Falcons because I trusted him, and Anders, like, you know, vouched for him, whatever. So, you know, it was we were in a really good spot, I think, from a company perspective, you know, just for the extra training and just the right relationships and just the right people.
Kevin, when you went into this, were you MTO'd, full MTO, or did you like have, for Charlie Company, I know you had 3 platoons, did you have like the max capacity of paratroopers going in there, or was it just...
No, we ended up deploying, like going into it. No, we weren't. But again, there was a lot of chaptering going on. But once this mission set came down, we started getting soldiers real quick, quick, and then we deployed with MTO plus. We had more than our complement, and then obviously, you know, like we had the fisters that were assigned to us, engineers, like they became part of us. Granted, some of them slept in different, you know, tent complexes during the deployment, but they were with us. And, you know, obviously we did change out medics periodically, but like the attachments that we had, I would like to say that the good majority of them wanted to, you know, stick with us during the deployment, which is always a compliment.
I mean, that was my second FIST team as a company commander. We did one training cycle with, you know, Andy Artis was like my fire support officer first round, and then like I got him trained up to standard because I'm like, I feel like I'm part artilleryman as well, because just the way I was trained, you know, growing up, like, you know, maximizing effects and all that type of stuff. And then they stripped him because they took Charlie Troop out of the Cap Squadron and gave him to Red Falcons on that first team. So that was their light infantry company, or the light infantry troop, sorry, that they took. And so they didn't come with the fire support element, so they took ours. They also took like all of our ISLAs. They took a lot of like our extra optics. And so like, you know, we're like, hey brother, you know, we're going to get those back. And, you know, that's another story. But, you know, so we ended up with like a really good team going out the door. And, you know, we got a good training cycle, the JRTC rotation. You know, one of my classmates I ran into him the other day, was like actually my OC, a guy named Sammy Sock, and we were talking, we work for the same company right now, and he was just like, yeah, that was one of the craziest, best JRTC rotations that I OC'd the whole time.
Yeah.
The company was awesome, but the mission was like nothing else that we did. And because they did a really good job of bending over backwards to try to replicate the scenarios we're going to have. So we air assaulted our asses off at JRTC because we knew that was going to be our toughest mission going forward. You know, we were doing sensitive side trying to set up sensitive side exploitations and making those challenging, realistic.
Tactical questioning, tactical call outs, like all this new stuff, you know.
No, they still did the same JRTC effects things. Like if you drop a Hellfire within like 2,000 meters of a soldier, it's fratricide. You know, like, you know, we're fucking parking them on the other side of the wall. So like 2 months later, kind of thing. So, you know, it was just, there were some artificialities, and I kind of lost my mind a couple times. I was fired, and luckily, you know, I really appreciate Colonel Davidson having my back a lot of times on some of those things. But I was just trying to like, hey, but my point was the OCs. I'm like, this is going to get people killed, making them afraid to use, you know, these fires and these effects at the range that we're going to need them. You know, they're afraid to use them. People are going to die that don't have to, right? Like, you know, I just to back it up, I mean, when I was in First Ranger Battalion, I was not a Ranger platoon leader my time there, just because I ended up getting there late, but I was support platoon leader, and I was another job. But the cool thing was Tony Thomas at the time was the battalion commander, and he's like, James, you're going to be an OC for all the platoon live fires. And so I walked behind a platoon or a squad or whatever, like every live fire for like 3 training cycles, you know, and I'm sitting in every AR. So I'm, you know, a lot of my peers were only getting so many, but I'm getting like all of the platoon combat.
Yeah.
And so I was very fortunate, but like one thing that he would do is like, he was, you know, you look up his background, I'm not going to describe it all here, but I mean, he spent a good bit of his time behind the fence doing things, and, you know, he would get demolitions like Bangalore's like you see in Saving Private Ryan, like we're sticking that shit just on the other side of this berm here, and we're going to light the fuse and we're going to hang out right here, versus how we had trained in the 82nd for years when we were breaching, that you'd have to run like 800 meters back here, dive into the berm, and have your buddies throw sandbags on top of you, you know, kind of thing. Like,
And
you can get a lot closer.
It transferred into freaking combat, man. Like, dude, like there was a mission where we dropped a GLMRS next door, right? Like literally, the only thing protecting us was a freaking a compound wall. You know, how many times did we do danger close, man? It's too many times that I can count on hands and toes.
But you know, we had, you know, expert, you know, folks supporting us all the time. 18-130, those crews, the Hammer crews, all those folks, like, trust them like with my life many times during that mission, you know, and trusted my soldiers' lives. I mean, there was a time where we had guys that were, you know, hand grenade range, but there was a bunch of, you know, vegetation in between them and the enemy, couldn't get grenades through whatever, and we had an 18-130 just take it wide, shoot 105's low angle, detonate it right on top of our soldiers, but all the, you know, spall went into the enemy. I mean, that was routine by the end of the mission, kind of thing.
Yeah, you would have never made it out of JRTC like that.
Nope.
No. But I mean, God bless them, they bent over backwards every other way. You know,
yeah, they did
on that stuff, and so, you know, little profanity and moved on. But we still got a lot of good training value out of the rotation, I thought. But so we fast forward, you know, we're watching Red Falcons. They did a great job. They took some casualties, you know, and, you know, and we're looking at every, you know, we're getting all the storyboards, we're getting all the lessons learned. You know, the mortar team got hit by the enemy mortar team. You know, they're up on a rooftop sitting there. They had one of their tubes up there sandbagged in, you know, took a direct hit, you know. Lieutenant Castro, Captain Castro, the platoon leader, lost his sight, you know. A couple other people lost their lives. A lot of folks' lives were changed forever, you know. But we learned, you know, they wire brushed themselves and they shared that with us, you know, what they could have done differently, what their signatures are like, how to try to, you know, maybe do something different next time. You know, and you know, we've got to understand that the enemy can hurt you if you let them. You know, it's even at night, and that was at a night. You know, it was a good hit by the enemy. So, yeah, we're looking at those type of things, and everything from how they medevac. Did a lot of medevac play, like during JRTC, like a lot of more than I'd ever done ever. You know, a lot of times you just like let your casualties rot, and then eventually somebody will, you know, let them come back in before you go do your live fire or something like that. And a lot of, you know, JRTC, but we were evacing all, you know, casualties and doing those type of things, ground, air. Got lots of reps at that. To prepare for this mission, I think, you know, me and Kevin were, prior to kicking off, like prior to the, you know, we're getting ready to go for 4 months or whatever, and it's like November sometime, we're like just hanging out in the office drinking beer after work is perfectly legal at the time. And the, you know, like man, you know, what's this gonna be like? What do you think? You know, we're just like, what do we think we're gonna lose on this? How are we gonna, you know, how many people are coming home with us from this one? Because we just, you know, watched what Red was going through, and we knew that they were at the, you know, because summer in Iraq isn't really fighting season. Fighting season was like when we were showing up, like November to, you know, it was going to be like February, March time frame. And so we knew we were going to get a little bit more, and then we knew that the you know, the situation in Iraq was still deteriorating significantly, and that's what brought about what, you know, it's later called the surge in Iraq. And so when people talk about the surge, they're like, oh yeah, we surged all these forces. They didn't surge all these. They surged one brigade, 2nd Brigade, 82nd. Everybody else either got extended, you're staying longer, or you got accelerated. You're going a little bit earlier than you planned. And there was like a lot of overlap that made it look like there was a lot more forces for about a 6-month period. But the reality of it is 2nd Brigade, 82nd. And so, you know, we're going forward just as they're making that decision. the Red Falcons come back and they tell Red Falcons, like, don't unpack your shit because they're going back. I never got my islets back because they're like, they knew they were going back. So, we didn't still butter about that. Like 20 years later, I'm still upset that they stole our shit that we needed to go fight. Fucking Brigade X or Battalion XO man was a dick. But anyway, I won't mention his name. But that's going to put my folks at risk, So now we're trying to lay targets, like we've been practicing, so whatever. But they were going to go back. The rest of the brigade headquarters was going to, northern Baghdad, and and then they're like, we'll figure out something to back up you guys later. Maybe we'll rotate you down to Baghdad or whatever. There was a whole bunch of ideas that we're going out the door realizing that, like, hey, we potentially don't have a backfill here, but me and Kevin were just sitting in the room and like, we're thinking like we're probably gonna take 4 or 5 casualties minimum during this mission as we're getting ready to go into it. And that, that's just, isn't that what we came up with? Just kind of spitballing it, and not trying to be negative or jinx ourselves or any of that stuff. But we're just like, this is going to be a lot harder than some of the stuff we've done in the past.
It's just combat deduction, man. I mean, like it's the reality of what you're seeing on the ground, what you're about to step into, and then the unknowns, that you don't know, that you think but as a leader, I think what that did is that really forced us to really emphasize the training piece and focusing these guys on how to patrol, how to freaking enter and clear if they need to, do the tactical call out while you are patrolling, stay off the freaking roads. Let's develop our own TTPs because there really wasn't a whole lot of dismounted TTPs as far as like clearing IEDs.
Fuck,
right?
no, nobody was doing any of that shit at the time.
No, and so like we had to develop our own, and we came up with some pretty good stuff that actually worked pretty well. But yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, James. I mean, I remember that day very well.
Yeah, and I'm like one of those guys. I'm like a Boy Scout, man. Like, be prepared kind of guy. And like, this is like my 4th deployment at this point, and I did Kosovo as lieutenant, did Afghanistan with Ranger Battalion. I did 14 months with 1st Cavalry Division, Western Baghdad, and I watched the insurgency kicked off. I watched the evolution. I watched the battlefield Darwinism of the insurgency go for like 14 months. Start from like really shitty IEDs that were pretty obvious on the side of the road, command debt kind of thing, to a little bit more complicated where they're taking flatbeds worth of stuff. Just for me, like, this is something that like my career had kind of shaped going into this mission, and like, you don't know what you're going to need. And I took literally everything in the arms room. Like, other people are like, you're taking your javelin? Yeah, I'm taking my fucking javelin.
Yeah. Taking everything. Taking everything.
It was a weird camcorder looking thing. And it was like, I was like, what is this? So like some kind of thermal. I'm like, fucking put it on the truck. And it came in use later because it had a different spectrum of thermal than what our other, the PAS thermals had. And it allowed you to see certain types of crush wire that wouldn't show up otherwise.
Dude, they did not want to give us claymores initially, and then we proved we need claymores, and we started getting claymores.
Dude, I used the shit out of claymores in that deployment. But I would tell you guys, there's nothing wrong with what you guys were thinking. Like, I think that shows that you guys care. Like, to me, going into this operation, man, like I said earlier, nobody was doing this. I mean, in Afghanistan, they were probably doing that kind of stuff, but
yeah, Afghanistan, they were.
Getting into the woods, getting in the tree line, working with who we were going to work with, knowing that we're not going to be fighting the rag dad fucking bad guys. We're going to, the organization that we fall under is going to put us in a position to fight some pretty tough Muldoons, right? So, and then just thinking about the TTPs there and growing, I don't think that was wrong. I think that's something that was, to me, that's awesome. Like, you got to you're sitting there together as a team trying to think, hey man, like, how do we bring the boys home, man? What's the best way to do that? So,
hey Kevin, are you working on any sort of advanced life-saving skills during this?
Yeah, actually we were. So like, and James had kind of freaking hit on it a little bit. So like we tried to send as many guys as we could to EMS, which we got, I want to say 4 or 6 certified. We at least had 1 per platoon. Yep. And then pretty much everybody was combat lifesaver, and then the TCCC stuff. It wasn't called TCCC.
Not back then.
It hadn't come out. It wasn't called TCCC at the time, but it was basically TCCC. You know, how to trait on the X.
Yeah.
That we started working stuff like that through AWG as well. And honestly, man, I ain't gonna lie to you. Like that, just that alone, the TCCC saved guys' lives.
Yeah. And I mean, Kevin could back me up on this. I did casualty play in like every bit of training. Like there was like, and that was again, that was another Tony Thomas thing. Like, I mean, there was times where we had like a training accident one time. A guy was a little bit close behind a Gustav and like burned a hole in his leg. Like would normally stop a live fire. Thomas was like, patch him up. Medics patch him up. We're not stopping. You know, just kept training. His life's not at risk. You know, and so my mindset is like you always got to we always incorporate, you know, medical into, and I did that, you know, the rest of my career from that point on. And I think it's a mindset, you know, kind of thing. It's like we got to take care of our folks, but keep fighting, you know, and that's kind of seems commonsensical, but you know, it wasn't always the case sometimes, you know, and
Right.
Other units, like somebody take a casualty and everything stops and everybody loses their mind. And
if I can, real quick, so what I'm hearing is, and I'm not an expert, James, right? You and I are the same here, but from my experience, everything that y'all have said is the hallmark of a good unit, right? Going all the way back to Kevin talking about, you know, it's awesome if you got great platoon sergeants. It really is. But if you're focusing on platoon sergeants at the company level or even the battalion level, you're probably behind the power curve. And so it's really those team leaders and those squad leaders. And what are you doing to set those guys up for success, to make sure they know what they're doing? Because those LGOPs, you know, the platoon sergeant's one person, right? You've got to have strong team leaders. You've got to have strong squad leaders that are capable of doing that. So that's number one, from my opinion. Number two is the fact that you're focused on realistic training, and you're having that hard conversation between you two of, okay, what are we actually about to walk into? Okay, we're getting the lessons learned from I think you said Red Falcon that's over there right now. Yeah. They're feeding y'all. You're seeing what's going on. Reality says, not trying to be heartless, not trying to be cruel. Reality says we're probably going to lose some people. Yep. So what do we do? How do we look at that now and start to mitigate that? Well, that's through tough, realistic training. That's through, you know, Kevin working with the medics and the medical teams, you working with the JRTC team to say, hey, this is what we need. We need you to push us as hard as possible. And to me, that is a recipe for success right there. And nothing's ever going to be perfect, right? You're going to still take your licks, but at least now you've got such a good base built for that company that you can start to absorb some of those hits when they come, and you can still keep moving forward. Yeah. So I applaud both of y'all for that.
Yeah, and I appreciate for you summarizing that, Chris.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like,
good job, Chris.
No, I mean, you know, it's like we're just here telling stories. So, you know, sometimes it's like, you know, I don't want to get lost here, but you know, I think it's important to kind of really talk about the enemy a little bit on this one too. Mm-hmm. You know, and you know, the enemy's learning and growing too, right? Like we said, battlefield Darwin. I used to use the term battlefield Darwinism, and we used to say, like in the company, like, you know, all the dumb insurgents are either dead or in jail by this point.
Yep.
You know, like, I mean, that's where we were in 2006 and 2008, and you know, so we kind of went in with that mindset of, you know, really respecting our enemy and trying to really get inside and think about how they think. And for me, like I wrote a paper, like internal, that I just kind of shared with my leaders. It's like getting beyond react to contact. And my mindset was going into this is like, spent a lot of time watching conventional units just go through the react to contract drill. They're really good about reacting to contract because that's all they fucking did, right? Let's go out, make contact, react, and do stuff. It wasn't a whole lot of, you know, what we were trained to do, you know, back in the day. It's like, you know, seize the initiative. But, well, how do you get in an insurgency like this? How do you get beyond react to contact? Well, first of all, we're going to air assault in their backyard, right? And so the you know, our mission was really to disrupt those sanctuaries. It didn't really, we probably went like a couple months before that was really described. It was described that way because our understanding of the situation, they knew kind of what needed to happen intuitively, or the leaders above our squadron. But eventually they're like, yeah, we need you to disrupt the sanctuary. And and what's the enemy sanctuary look like? Well, it's different depending on where you're at in Iraq at this point.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes the sanctuary is, you know, it's that palm grove just on the other side of the obstacle belt of IEDs in that small village that sits 7 kilometers from your big fob. You know what I mean? And the conventional units, if they do get there, they're going to take so many casualties that they're not really going to do much once they get there. You know, they get into that sanctuary. They're probably not going to do much once they get there. And it's really easy to see that dragnet coming for you to get out of the way. Okay. Yeah. And then the spearfishers are coming in, and you kind of start to spot those TTPs, right? Like, you know, I don't want to give too much of the intel, but you know, we noticed that like entire villages would turn the lights on when we'd fly over in our helicopters at a certain point. Yeah. And it would light up an entire valley as we moved up it sometimes as early warning. So when you start looking at the enemy trying to come up with ways to figure out that good guys are coming, you know, it's pretty easy. Like they knew the threat was the helicopters at that point. It wasn't the tanks or the Bradleys and the Strikers or the MRAPs or the whatever up-armored Humvees moving down the road. It was the helicopters that were the real risk. And so they would go to ground. And so we were trying to get to these sanctuaries and do it in such a way that, you know, one, we could disrupt whatever they were doing in that sanctuary. In some places, what we found were they were building homemade explosives that they would use to make IEDs, car bombs, all the bad stuff. One area we found there was actually a training area for insurgents. They had a sniper school. It didn't look like our sniper school. It was very rudimentary shit, but they had some pen and paper, put some pen and paper, and they had sniper weapons and ammo and targetry and things to kind of teach, you know, insurgent level sniperism.
Yeah.
They had air defense school, you know, and it was up in one area we went where they, you know, they had a whole bunch of fabrication labs where they would fabricate and take like old Saddam era surface-to-air missiles and try to figure out a way to, you know, launch them off this rail and hit a U.S. aircraft. They're never successful. They pissed off an AC-130 one night and went right chest on their ass. You know, I mean, it was the most awesome display of firepower I think I'd ever seen in my life at that point.
Yeah.
But they got the missile off, you know, and we found their cache and all the different rail systems and little drawings of the bullshit. We did our sensitive and evac it, but it helped, you know, getting into those sanctuaries where they were trying to generate combat power to do stuff.
Yeah. Launch
car bombs, launch IED attacks, launch indirect fire attacks. Like we were getting, that's where they put us, you know? And I kind of equated it at some point, like we talked, like this is kind of like Sherman's March to the Sea. You know, we're just fucking burning everything that we can to keep it out of the enemy's hands. And we kind of kept track of our progress. I think we started at like, 1971 lot numbers on thermites. We got to like 1976. You know what I mean? Like we went through pallets of thermites because we're burning relines and they just, you know, go sound like popcorn going off. It'd be like dish rounds or all the way up to 155s cooking off and stuff like that. That, you know, there's enemy stuff. And so that was what we were there to do. We would be that predator, just go in there and just annihilate that sanctuary.
Yeah. And James, real quick, just to give a little bit of like essay on the enemy too, man. Like we would fly into these other organizations, AOs, like they called them the landowners or whatever.
Yeah.
But these guys are so blatant on what they did. They would put, like James is saying, they'd put a training facility right outside of FOB.
Yeah.
Like because they knew, like, you know, that unit was so shielded or on the defensive side of the house, or wouldn't come off the roads, or they wouldn't go into the palm groves. So they were that brazen enough to say, hey, I'm going to put this training site right outside this FOB or whatever. That's just who they were, man. So
James, real quick. So I don't want to jump ahead. So if you're gonna talk about this, just tell me and I'll take a suppressant here. How did you get left of the boom? Right? What was it that finally enabled y'all? Was there something? Right, because that I know up in Korengal and Kunar, that was always one of the hard things for us, was trying to figure out how do we catch them coming across the border from Pakistan, right? Because we knew they were coming across the border from Pakistan, but the border was just so fucking porous and the intel was so sparse. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack sometimes. Yeah. And so as you're talking about them lighting up the valleys as you're flying through, is that something you're going to talk about later, or can you talk to it now?
I mean, you know, we're working for an organization that has national level assets working for us.
Okay.
right?
Yep.
They are spearfishing folks that they have put in interrogation booths, and they're getting information. But they're also relying on our reports, right?
Okay.
Because when you go in and you spearfish somebody, you get to see like a compound or two. You take that person out, you might be able to dump their phone and get some information off of that. You might get some residual signal type stuff off of, conversations that were had around that incident. But when you drop somebody in there for like, and we weren't just going in there for like 4 hours. We're going in there for like, our typical mission profile is 48 to 72 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
48 or 72 hours, you're going to learn a lot more.
Yeah.
Right? Something that wasn't a target a lot of times wasn't even close to being a target. We started, first time we found a homemade explosive lab, like we had to convince a lot of fucking people that it was a homemade explosive lab. Like the platoon sergeant, Sergeant Quellhorse was, like that we brought in combat camera and he did like a This Old House they made a spoof to it, like This Old House, our headquarters did, like put the music to it as he walked around and kind of like, okay, this is where they stir some shit. And then here's where they dry the shit. And here's where they bag the shit, and it's like, moving through it, and everybody's like, holy shit, that's a homemade explosive lab. Yeah.
Like, no shit.
I mean, we found a cache of nitric acid one time.
Okay.
Nitric acid, I don't want to get into the whole chemical stuff about it because I want to give insurgents somewhere an idea on how to make bombs. Nitric acid is a component of certain homemade explosives. I went to Sapper School as a cadet. They taught us like how to make homemade explosives as part of that program. I knew that there was ways to do it using that and other things. Couldn't convince anybody that was the case until we got some, but we kept sending send this to somebody who knows shit about explosives, homemade explosives. And finally some FBI guys came back and said like, yes, that is a key component in this type of thing. I'm like, thank you. And then, because I'm pretty sure they're not trying to grow more nitric acid by burying it in this fucking field. That's kind of my mentality during that point, right? Like me and Kevin are pulling our hairs out like, come on, man. It's like buried with 155 rounds. Did they expect them to make with 155 rounds and produce more 155 rounds? No, I'm pretty sure that's what we're going for here. Like, it was a key component, right? And what's cool is that we did the good SSC and we found out where they're actually buying the stuff because it had barcodes for like, how to get rid of them. But I mean, it like down the road, it like allowed us, but we were discovering these. It was like discovery learning. Our predecessors didn't find homemade explosive rounds. They found a lot of insurgents and killed them and did good things for God and country. But we kind of got into more of like, what are they doing here in this exact sanctuary? And this one, go ahead.
We really got into almost like the investigative part of it, right?
Yeah,
like
that's
and
exactly
being able, like the SSE really kind of drove, and it even drove the next target like it's supposed to do. But yeah,
it sounds like y'all really got into.
I do agree, man. That whole nitric acid thing. I remember you having some sleepless nights trying to freaking explain that to people. But
yeah. But once we found that first homemade explosive lab, we're like, this is probably one of the most big bang for our buck kind of things that we can actually find. And so, but like when you look at a homemade explosive, well, what's it need? We used to do these relative combat power analysis type of thing. Like a homemade explosive lab is a generating thing, right? It generates combat power for the bad guys. What's it need? Well, it needs some security, right? So it's not going to be like out where somebody can see it from a long ways away. It's usually tucked in close to a town. What else? Well, it's going to probably need a compound wall, right? Because they don't want people looking in. They're probably going to tape up the windows so people can't look in through the windows and see that shit. They're going to probably, they're going to do a lot of things. Like they're going to deter people from coming to see what it is. What are the other things? We started figuring those things out. We started mapping them out. Like in general, where are they placing these things? And by the time, 20 missions later, after we found the first one, we actually pinpointed a couple before we even landed. Like, we knew that they had some there, and we made them march objectives, and that was like one of the first. We put an LZ in within striking range, and that was one of the first places we hit, and we found a couple like that. It wasn't all the time, but in general, and this is something we did during all of our IARs, right? Like we took these things, these situations, and we talked about them. Not like this is what you should do in the exact situation. No. It's like, how should we have thought about this situation? How should we have looked at the enemy prior to arriving at this situation, thought about them from a combat power standpoint, information, protection, all those things that they teach you doctrinally, we started talking that way in our AARs. Nice. Okay. And then it was, just kind of trying to get to the point where even our team leaders and squad leaders were looking at it from that perspective. Mm-hmm. And so they became so much better sensors on the battlefield and they would say like, there's something here, I don't know what it is, I feel it, you know, and it's just that mindset of trying to get inside the enemy's head, understand how they operate. I mean, the enemy didn't want to die. All those folks that just want to go out there and die, they already did that. You know, it's 2006, 2007, 2008. I mean, these folks they were trying to shape geopolitical affairs at that point, you know, and ANZ said, I want 2 car bombs in downtown Baghdad tonight. 2 car bombs showed up in downtown Baghdad tonight, you know, following a presidential announcement by President Bush by saying there's no insurgency going on. He could blow some shit up just to show that there was. You know what I mean? That's where we were at, and that's who we were targeting. And so, you know, but getting people to understand that mindset and how to get after those situations, you didn't have to, like, me and Kevin didn't have to be standing over a squad leader's shoulder. They knew what to look for. Platoon sergeants were out there. Platoon sergeants were out there, and squad, you know, platoon leaders were out there on missions, but they weren't involved in the tactical stuff a lot of times. They were the ones that were on the radio doing what only a platoon leader and platoon sergeant could do, you know, in those situations where you get more help or whatever. And so, but our AARs we really looked hard at those things, I felt like, and we got people to talk, and we made it. And Kevin and I created a safe space. Like, people had ideas. We never, you know, made fun of them, or, you know, even if it was stupid, we would talk about it. It's like, well, you know, let's talk about this idea. You know, one of our NCOs said, and you know, God bless him, he's like, what if we just left an M4 out, and then somebody goes and picks it up, and then we just shoot them? And we're like, that's a war crime. You know, because, you know, it's like, well, why? You know, we have these hard conversations, you know, because everybody's on a different level, and that's okay.
Told you that wouldn't work, Jerry.
You know, and it was like, it's like, what would you do if there's an M4 laying in the street in your hometown?
You know,
some kid didn't get, you know, hurt themselves with it. You know?
Chris, I tell you what's good with these. I tell you what's good for these two, and I can tell like the platoon sergeant perspective.
I will say this though, Shiny Sparkly did work, but we weren't.
We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. Let's get left in the room like Chris wants to talk about.
Yeah.
So, hey, Chris, I tell you from like the platoon sergeant perspective and what James was talking about. One, the sensors thing that he talked about was spot on, because I you know, I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but I just think about it. I think like the right, like, you know, the Escarino's out there with his team trying to maneuver through an IED belt, seeing and being able to identify what wrong looks like, right? Like, we got so good at that, man. I'll tell you. But for these two though, like,
I don't think I'm hearing you, Jerry.
Oh, can you hear me now?
We got
it might
you
be
there.
on my end.
All right.
Yeah, Kevin, I think it might be on your end.
Did you hear me from the rest of the time, or I was just talking to you? Okay, whatever.
You are lighter though than Chris or me.
Yeah. So, like, you know, the
What's that?
sensor thing, the sensor stuff that James is talking about, right, Chris? Can you hear me now?
I got you loud and clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not hearing something.
I'll just pause for a second.
No, Jerry, keep going. You're good.
All right. So, you know, the sensor thing where team leaders be able to identify with something that looks wrong, we got really good at that. But going back to, you know, Kevin and James talking about the mission command that they got, they let us, you know, maneuver on the battlefield, they let us make decisions. They weren't in our ass.
James, are you hearing him?
Yeah.
I'm hearing it, Kevin. I apologize if you're not.
Yeah, I'm not.
Dial back in.
I'll pause.
Yeah, let me dial back in.
Jerry, do you mind?
Yeah, but
edit this out or what?
Yeah, we'll just talk through it. I'll just keep talking.
Edit out. We don't edit anything, James.
Okay, well, I just
come on.
I'm sure I've said something stupid at this point.
No, you did not. You were actually really good so far. Hey, so can you hear me now, Kev?
Yeah, I got you now, bro.
All right. So, you know what I was saying. So, for going back to you two, I'm just gonna give you a compliment. I want to give you guys my compliment, because as a platoon sergeant serving under y'all, like the mission command, you let us do what we had to do, right? You let us, you know, make those decisions on the battlefield. I served with some organizations. It's not like that, right? But the biggest thing for you guys that I felt is that you had like the trust. Like, you guys had our backs, man. And that was like, in that kind of environment, to have your leadership, you have your back and have the trust that, hey, you made a right call. Like, and I thought you guys are really good at that, man. So I just want to throw that out there.
And we're willing to underwrite honest mistakes. You know what I mean? Like, it's combat. There's gonna be tons of mistakes. I made tons of mistakes in 16 months. There's gonna be tons of mistakes, and you know, and we Kevin and I were both like, just learn from it. You know?
Yeah.
there's a few things that were, we had to, do investigation, whatever, but we learned from it and we moved on. And I think people appreciated that as well.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, I could sense with some of the platoon sergeants initially, the whole, why do we need to have the company headquarters with us? Why do we need to have quote unquote contact club with us? All of that was really actually James really thinking strategically at a tactical level as far as like, where do I need to place my effects? So that if I know that we think that this platoon is going to go into this one village, because the deal, or this one part of the village, and they would be affected by enemy fires or whatever, and that's what the templated enemy situation was, which James was really good at deciphering. Then we would want to have contact club closest to that platoon. That way we could respond. And then sometimes James would be like, well, maybe I don't want to have contact club right with that platoon, but we'll put that platoon there so that contact club can maneuver with, another platoon or another squad over to either reinforce or to flank. So yeah, it's good to hear you say that, Jerry.
Yeah.
And let's back up for a minute.
Yeah, can you say?
I want to describe contact club in a few
please. That's what I was trying to
Thank you, because I don't know what contact club is.
Yeah, sorry, Chris, you don't know. I mean, you will know after this, but you didn't know. This story's been long and telling here.
Hey,
So,
I'm writing notes down. Let's go.
But I just want to back up for a minute. So one thing that we didn't have in our company going into this was a lot of combat experience. I'm gonna say we did not have a lot of combat experience.
That's true.
It was like I said, it was like my whatever deployment. Kevin is like your third or fourth deployment as well.
Yep.
But like soldiers, and you can read the book on killing. Like there's some truth. There's so much truth in that book where soldiers don't know what right looks like when it comes to pulling the trigger until someone shows them. Right? Like very few will do it of their own accord. So one thing that was that just naturally happened. Kevin, like I blew out my ACL from this, so I was kind of like mobility wise, I wasn't at my peak. But Kevin was very mobile. And so what we did is we kind of set up a company QRF because we're dismounted. And it looked like Kevin, our PA, Doc Schlacky, who was a captain and a PA, medical coverage. We figured we'd put a mortar tube in a handheld mode as part of the QRF because we liked introducing things into the battlefield the enemy wasn't used to, and that was like a big game changer that our enemy hadn't really anticipated at that point. And like a lot of people we can talk about that. I love mortars, and Jimmy Cox, could put a fucking mortar in a trash can at like 750 yards.
Yeah, I'm convinced. James, I'm convinced we had the best mortars, fisters.
Oh, and it was like
all that.
And it wasn't just him. Like his predecessor, and God bless me, I can't remember his name. He would like. For PT, those mortars just get drilled, and I was constantly going through and stealing extra mortar training rounds for them. Like so, Jimmy inherited a good team. Jimmy's just a phenomenal athlete that could do some shit. You know what I mean? Like, but Kevin being there, Kevin was at the first like 34 contacts. That was one of his NCOR bullets. I remember writing it, and it stuck with me throughout the years because it was a very profound thing. Like. You make it was like 34 of the first 35 contacts. Kevin was there to maybe not like right as the first bullet was fired, but he wasn't far behind, right? And he's like, and everybody's like, "What do we do?" And Kevin's like, "That's the enemy. We shoot them." Like Kevin, like leadership by LB. Kevin is leadership by LBE. Like you want your NCOs to be, like getting people there. I'm here, shoot, and it was huge. That was like such a transformative thing because. Now we went from like on killing where people are like somewhere like less than 5% of the people are willing to pull the trigger and shoot the enemy of their nation to like 90+% range, like very easily because they were more confident. They've seen it. Somebody showed them what right looks like, and it all makes sense to them now.
Yeah. And you guys are the only ones. You guys are the only ones doing that. You guys are the only ones doing that.
Oh yeah, the first time we made contact and like. The contact club really got into the shit, and we were firing mortars at people. God, Colonel Davidson, God bless you. Like, I could tell he just woke up, grabbed a hand mic, like, how the fuck do you have PID over the net? You know, and I'm like, well,
We're right there.
on the island. They're shooting at us with machine guns and RPGs. Pretty fucking sure they're an enemy.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say those are the bad guys over there.
You know, but we earned that trust going from that point, you know, and I'll be honest, like ACO, like Matt Adamczyk, like you guys are just making shit up. You guys are just out there. I'm like,
Yeah. No, James.
we're not, trust me, we're not like,
Yeah.
we just got some dudes with some good noses and just know how to find, and we think about things differently. Like we're actually hunting out here. We're not just patrolling, we're hunting, which is a different mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we started talking about how to get left of the boom. It's like, you know, we understood from the first couple missions, like here's how the enemy operates. We land, they run, we don't AC-130 them, they hide. Next morning they start trying to get eyes on where we're at. At about 9 or 10 o'clock, you see all the kids and women and children leave the streets. That's when the RPGs and small arms start. You know, it's kind of like that's the pattern, right? Like, it didn't take us long to figure it out because we were, you know, thinking that way. We were talking about it that way. And so, you know, like Kevin, I could see him. He'd just like be sitting over there in a patrol base and start getting the stitch. And I'm like, you're going to go head over to like whatever we're doing now, aren't you? And he's like, yep. And he'd like be en route, right? About the time they made contact. I'm not even joking. Like, you'd already be on, like everybody read, like your ship be on. It wasn't like we were spinning up contact club was already on the move. Or it'd be like, okay, based on what we saw last night, where people were running to, where we AC-130 folks, like this, like we didn't land at the right area, but I think the area is right here.
Yep.
And Kevin would take a small element out, you know, small element to go make contact, and he'd make contact. And then we'd get the platoon QRFs to show up and reinforce them. And he'd be like, come here, shoot there, you know? And, you know, after about 3 months, we had like 3 really well-trained platoons that had all been through a number. Second platoon had like the first like 12. And I, you know, God bless Paul Horst and Brian Lebetnik. I raked them over the coals during AARs for like the first like 5 or 6 missions. I'm sure they didn't love it. I know Brian, you know, I feel bad because I know he was in the tough spot, you know, like why does it take, like we're on our second sort of sortie of AH-64s. Why haven't you talked them on the fucking target yet? You know, and I'm like, using my mind kind of thing. But, you know, a month, you know, but the way we did our ARs, everybody else was learning from that. If I couldn't see because there was read line. Well, like a few weeks later, you know, I got Mike Hess up, you know, calling in like perfectly great correction.
Oh, Mike.
I
love Mike.
You know?
Yeah, I love Mike. I'm
like, where are you? How are you seeing this based on where? And he's like, oh, he was up on a fucking water tower. Like him and his water tower on top. And I'm like, I'm seeing all these tracers just lighting him up, but he's up there calling in corrections on it because he knew he had to be able to see over the read lines to get good effects. Yeah. You know, because Brian didn't. He couldn't, you know, just based on where we're at. And we started picking our patrol base locations. We started picking things like that to give us better, you know, visibility and understanding of the. And when we moved to patrols, the way we set up like overwatch positions was different based on those initial contacts. So that way we could react better. To the point where we're getting left of the boom was, you know, the bad guys knew we were there to blow up their shit, and we did that a lot. And sometimes we didn't find their stuff. But we blow up like the few AK-47s we found, and that'd still make them mad because they didn't know we didn't find their stuff. And they start shooting in the general direction of the explosion. You know, that's what Kevin was referring to earlier, shiny sparkly. And I give full credit to Kevin for coming up with that. Like, I came up with the name, but he came up with the, you know, the idea is like, hey, every time we blow stuff up, they start shooting at the explosion, not us. Like, you know, it's like, we should use that. And I'm like, that is a great idea. And so we started finding a cache. You know, we would go make this big, you know, this just became company SOP. It's like
big scene.
What's that?
We would do a big scene of setting up this cache to blow.
You know, and then there had been an explosion. Then the bad guys who had moved to the other side of the river, where they knew we couldn't do anything about them dismounted, would just start shooting at us in retaliation. Machine guns, RPKs, like dish guns, all sorts of shit, RPGs, you know, just angry that we're blowing up their stuff. Well, what we started doing, you know, getting ahead of that content, we'd set this thing up and we'd have 2 machine guns with a mortar tube. Maybe later on when they were doing drive-bys, like from across the river, like driving and shooting at us, we'd have a javelin in there with a sniper team, you know? And so when they start shooting, it was like back and it was like that fast, you know?
And like any CCA that we would have, or any cast that we would have in support, they would be well off station, not making any noise, just be able to respond to us if we needed them. You know, it was.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of became such an SOP that one time, like, I remember waking up and Tom, you know, my company XO was like, "Hey, sir, you know, the enemy set up this thing on the other side of the river, and they were doing a checkpoint. Da da da. We triggered them like this. I had 81s, an A10." Da, da, da. And I'm like, yeah. It's like, you know, you can wake me up for these, you know, things on it. You know, I don't mind waking up for that, something like of that level, Tom.
Yes.
He's like, well, we had it. And I'm like, fair enough. You know, but I mean, it worked, you know, but that's, you know, and I was, at the end of the day, I was comfortable, really, I was comfortable with it. I was just giving him a hard time, but, you know, just because my boss was probably going to give me a hard time. It's like, why is Charlie 6 not on the radio? And, you know, Charlie 5 is, you know, it's like, you know, but the idea was like, you know, you got to really understand. You got to climb in your enemy's head, and you know, people, you know, like we used to play like spades and other card games and stuff like that. You know, as like during a time between missions, and you know, I'd get accused of playing with my food, like, you know, because I would like Kevin, you can, you know, like I think Grizz, our engineer NCO was like, you're playing with your food, because we were just. Like I think it was me and Kevin, like just totally skunked them, like just crushed them on spade, and it was like we were just setting them up, like, you know, and it was like, but that's how I want to win. That's how we want to win. Like,
Yep.
We want to just barely win. We want to win like I want you guys to show up like after we strike somebody, just kicking them like, oh my god, you know, I want you to have that kind of a reaction to, you know, like the contact afterwards. Like we just dominate so much.
You take their will.
You know,
yeah.
Yeah, and that's how you win. And you know, it was weird. You know, we just kind of we did this for, you know, the first 8 months, and then we had this colonel from West Point show up, and he was doing like a book. I cannot think of his name. I'll think of it in a minute. I got his book somewhere over here. And
the historian.
What's that?
Is that the historian that you're talking about? Okay.
And he was talking to lieutenants and stuff like that, and trying to get like a PL's perspective. And he's like, you know, I've been all around Iraq, and he's like, this is the first place where I feel like you guys think we can actually fucking win.
Yeah, I felt that. I think the guys felt that too. I was like, geez.
Guys, yes, you're absolutely right. We're fucking going out and kicking ass every time we go outside the wire, and we are seeing the effects. It's like, do you notice there's less car bombs in Baghdad right now? Yeah, we blew up like 8 HME labs. I've got a whole spreadsheet. I've got a spreadsheet of one mission. You know, you know, we blew up all these car bomb factories. Fuck yes. You know, we destroyed the Southern Belt. Like people were giving us a hard time. Like, there's no way. We destroyed the Southern Belt one mission. Like we took out the last mirror. Now, like, so we did like Shiny Sparkly. And this dude, very savvy, on the other side of the river, never went anywhere where he didn't have 10 kids around him at any given time. But he was on the phone, on the radio, nonstop. We had low-level voice intercept with us, so we were able to pick out every time he would say something to somebody. He would direct visobs. He'd send people out on motorcycles to get eyes on where we were at. He'd start coordinating car bombs and all these things. We're picking things up just because, you know, at this point we're kind of mapping it out. And so we finally decided to pull the trigger on this thing. This guy still got kids on him. We can't touch him, right?
Yeah.
But we get the visob. We identified the visobs. Sniper shoots him, shoots the driver. There's like 5 dudes in the car. I'm sitting next to a kid, and I used to know the kid's name by heart. And for some reason, I can't remember. And I could look at it. Spina. Yeah.
Spina?
Javelin gun.
Spina.
He sit there, fires a javelin. Gene Zink's there. Gene Zink would be able to, for AUG was right there too. Fires this javelin after we capped the driver. Like you can see the dude panicking in the car. Got like a, you know, squad plus like suppressing them. Javelin hits the car. Car starts, all sorts of stuff in the car starts cooking off. You know, the dude tells the, you know, hey, I need somebody to go on a motorcycle, see if anybody's still alive. Sniper shoots a guy on the motorcycle. Dude's starting to panic now. Tells his son to go do that. Just as we get the Apaches on station, fire hellfire, hit the Emir's son in the vehicle, you know, and somebody gets out of the vehicle, they're running away. We track them to this building, you know, like basically like they're talking about it being like the car bomb factory. We hit that with a barrack hellfire. It explodes. LOVIs just confirmed, like, yep, now we just blew up the car bomb factory. They just and the dude's upset because the guy that we hit, the Vizog that went to go check out the people that we killed in the first vehicle was his son. So he goes, that's the only time he left the kids. And he went to go check on his own son in the vehicle. And that's when, you know, we had 2 snipers engaged. One hit him and there was like a 50 cal and a 7.62, and one hit him, and the other one hit him with a 50 cal, and he went flying, and that was it. Something that was done at that point.
Nice.
We never did another mission south.
The only problem with that whole freaking little firefight, which it really wasn't a firefight, it was an ambush, was that Spina was supposed to do a direct attack with the javelin, and he did the top down. So we thought initially it was a malfunctioning javelin.
Because it's over water and there's power lines, there's all kinds of things that could have went wrong.
And it was only like 300, maybe 400 meters away. So like we were expecting, you know, spectacular explosion like that. And next thing we know, we're like, oh shit. Yeah. Oh shit.
I mean, you know, it was still beautiful.
It was.
And Cena was like shaking so bad, he sat down and just like immediately pulled out a cigarette and just started smoking. Like I had a whole, he couldn't get a lock. He was shaking so bad. You know, not judging, because I would have been the same way. It's like Buck Rush. Have you ever been in a deer stand? Like
the funniest part about that too.
Like however long to lock it on, and but no, I mean it worked out and it was perfect. And I actually the LOVI team leader and I met at Tom Nelson's promotion colonel. My old
really?
Down at Fort Gordon, and he was like, that was the most beautiful thing I ever fucking saw. That was the, like, you not only did you predict what they were going to do, say and react, that like we were there in the perfect position to capture it all, the proof, the way you were thinking about it, like, you know, and how it all unfolded. I mean, that was like one scenario, and it's like probably one of our better ones, because it was just, you know, partly because I was just standing right there for most of it, and it sticks in my mind. But it was just, but it was the mind, is a good example of the mindset, right? Like we're hunting, you got to get these guys to expose themselves, you know, for based on their ROE, you know, and what that looks like is a little bit different in every scenario. But getting people to think about it in the right way, not tell them what to think, but how to think, you know, about the problem set in general. Like, because there was reports that like the motorcycle coming down the road wasn't even reported by the platoon I was with. It was reported by the next platoon down, you know, and things like that, or maybe the next company, you know, maybe it was I can't even remember, you know, but it allowed us to develop the understanding that we needed to be able to strike with confidence. I mean, it's not a, you know, I've given my initials for a thermobaric hellfire on a building isn't necessarily like something I take lightly. You know what I mean? Like I got to own that shit, not the pilots, me. You know, and Kevin the same way when he was out there, or the XO, or the, you know, any of the whoever was out front, you know, they had to own those strikes. And you know, and there was times where things went wrong. You know, I'll be the first to admit there's times we AT-130 folks, and they had kids with them as they were running. They had AK-47s and stuff, and they're bad guys in general. It sucks that they had kids with them. It's hard to tell, you know, looking top down. But you get in the initials, and you know, and I know Kevin had to deal, you know, walking up on the scene, come tell me about it later, and you know, and I was just like grateful that Kevin was there to kind of, you know, he had to deal with that shit to allow me to keep fighting. You know what I mean? And they did the right thing from a humanitarian standpoint for those children. But I mean, they were there, and I hate the fact that our enemies would use that as shields at times. And there was a time we had guys that, you know, we're out there and we're in a bad area, and we get reports they're going to send a car bomb at us, and the car comes driving at us at 70 miles an hour down a road, you know, weaving in and around our serpentines, driving down fields trying to get around us. Guys engage, and it's like, you know, 3 generations of a tribe, you know, the tribal leader, his son, and his grandson one time. And that was horrible. You know, I felt bad for our paratroopers that had to do the thing that was the right action to take in that scenario to protect us all, and then live with the consequences. And I think that's something that, you know, that could be a whole another podcast that we talk about. But I mean, that's the reality of it, is it's a very messy scenario. Sometimes you get everything right, you know, and you blow up the factory and kill the emir and do all those things. Sometimes like innocent people get caught up in the shit.
Yeah.
And die, you know.
I'll tell you, so Chris, so for us, like when we got to Camp Speicher, we lost our 82nd identity pretty much. Like we went to, we were like black patches and pretty much sterile kind of thing. The organization we worked to, I won't say too much about it, but James keeps saying the AC-130. We had assets a conventional unit doesn't really typically have. We
Yep.
could kill you in multiple ways.
Yeah.
So to have that, have that with us, we had, we I think, our fisters and our FOs and all those guys and our engineers, you're able to utilize the stuff that's not traditionally, conventional stuff was,
Sure.
dude, we got so good at it, man. We got
Yeah.
so good at it. I'll tell you, and I think Kevin can kind of agree with me. I think like air assault operation wise, I think we were the best in the Army at the time. Like we could do that shit. Like we could bring birds in cemeteries. We could bring birds in. We were just really good at air assault operations, man. And
Dude,
I would argue that we were the best in the Army besides Ranger Regiment. Ranger Regiment
Sure.
does it too, but I think we were very good at that, and seeing us grow and just get better as we went along with those kind of tactics and their TTPs and stuff. It's just it's an awesome sight.
there was a reason why the greater task force that we were helping to like that we were support for would send people out to operate with us, right? So like throughout the spectrum, and there was a reason for it. And I don't want to like toot our horn too much, because to be honest with you, man, like Chris, what we were doing was infantry shit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was infantry shit, but unfortunately, the Army. Now, when I'm talking about on the ground level, we were doing infantry shit, from air assault operations to clearing operations to all that kind of stuff. That's what we were doing. Doctrinally, everything was sound. We did add some things here and there that kind of like tested the ends of doctrine or whatever, but it worked, and that's why you call it TTP, right? But overall, there was nothing really special about it, outside of the fact that we did have capabilities aligned to us that allowed us to do things that most infantry units at the time were not allowed to, or not. I wouldn't say not allowed to, but didn't have the capability. So some of the assets that you can't talk the success of Task Force Falcon without talking the immense capabilities that we had, right? That was provided to us.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I will also say that the task force as a whole did a really good job at getting creative on using those assets. Like
Mhm.
you just had that freaking vignette that James talked about with LLVI, right? I mean, that was kind of the perfect multi-domain operation, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, our Raven operator,
Yeah.
Ozog and shit, thinking of the other kid's name. But Ozog's the other gentleman's dead as well, and I apologize because he died of natural causes after. That's another conversation as well. But it was like a SOP. Like we made contact that Raven was up in the air within like 10 minutes, like less than like 5 minutes. Like it's like get a rod, get it up in the air, get eyes on, and just simple. Like we fought to get more combat power in the fight at every opportunity, even if it was something as simple as wire cutters to get through the fences so we can move faster through the palm groves. Little things like that. We wouldn't ask for like gunculators, or fast roping out of spatial. We'd ask for like simple things. Here's what we want. Here's what we need. Here's how it's going to make us more effective. I mean, even like nobody was like javelins were boxed up, and I'm saying like, hey, you got a problem with drive-bys? Our enemy knows like how long it takes our Apaches to get on station. So here's something we got to do something different, and that's why I was like, we need javelins. And once we said it, it wasn't like it was like a cosmic idea or anything. It was just, but like, and our headquarters trusted us enough to allow us to have them, and employ them the right way, because they weren't cheap, but at the same time, it was like necessary combat power. I mean, nobody else was shooting handheld mortars in theater. We were shooting freaking like nonstop.
But it's like it's the perfect coalescence, whatever. Yeah. But it's when shit comes together at the right time is what I'm trying to say. between, again, a unit that has come in well-trained, capable, identified gaps and seams, whether that's in capabilities that you need in addition to what you've already got, the javelins you just spoke of, AC-130 gunships, because you're part of a bigger, broader task force. But y'all have shown now that, over time, not only are you capable, but if I give you additional assets, you're even more capable.
Yeah.
And so and the reason I say that is because I want y'all to toot your horn a little bit, right? Y'all, what y'all are describing is not your average rifle infantry company. It's not.
Yeah.
Think about it. All of us have been in numerous companies over our careers. Not every company was put together and as well trained as this, and that's something to be proud of, right? The fact that y'all were trusted enough that you, James, you trained the company so well that you trust your XO to go through what is quite a very complex troops in contact. Yes. And you can just bust his balls about it, right? But you know that he's actually going to do what needs to be done. Yeah. And same with you, Kevin. The fact that you're out there with the God, what'd you call it? The combat squad.
Club.
There you go.
Contact club.
First rule of contact club: there is no contact club.
That's another story.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's amazing, right? And I'm fumbling over words here, but really, what y'all have built back then, it sounds amazing. Right?
So, if I can cut in real quick from the first sergeant perspective, I got to give props where props is due. Like, the dudes, man, the dudes were war fighters, bro. And I can't. I know everybody's going to come onto your podcast, and everybody's going to go onto all the other podcasts and say, yeah, and I'm not doubting that, right? But I'm telling you, man, Charlie Company had some freaking war fighters, and they wanted to get after it. I can honestly say that there might have been maybe 2 people in that entire company throughout the duration of that 18 months, 16 months. I consider it 18 months because you look at the front end and then you look at the back end. It turned into a longer deployment, obviously, but I felt like it was 18 months with, all the pre-deployment and all that kind of stuff. There might have been maybe 2 dudes that wanted to walk away from, that got overloaded with the contacts and got, were concerned about themselves more than they were the team. But I'm telling you, man, like that.
Yeah.
I've been a part of really great organizations, and I'm telling you right now, the dudes were awesome. And there was something that I would always do, and I'm not tooting my horn, but because it always gave me pride afterwards. It's like, hey, dude, we do these formations, and I was like, hey, look, I just want to remind you guys, and like, I think it might have made James cringe a little bit, but I was like, I just want you to let you know, you raise your arms, your right hand twice to become expendable, right? You're infantry, you're a paratrooper. That's what we are. We're going to go out here and we're going to fucking kill the enemy. We're going to fight the enemy, and we're going to keep our buddy alive. And that's really was, I'm not saying that was the esprit de corps, but I'm telling you, the esprit de corps of that organization was amazing. And I have yet to see anything like it since. And I've been in some great organizations since, but I'm telling you, man, that James did a really good job as the senior leader of that company, mentoring his freaking PLs, and, me mentoring the platoon sergeants, and then us combining to get those team leaders and those squad leaders to let these guys know this is what we're here to do. And that's the reason why you really raise your right hand, is to go and execute this stuff. And then, oh, by the way, make sure your buddy gets out of this thing okay. Yeah. Right. And it was inherent from the moment that I feel like that I got to the organization where James was already there, to the point where I begrudgingly had to freaking leave and go take up Charlie Troop 173 at that time. But yeah, sorry, I just had to throw out there because I wanted to give the boys some props.
Yeah. No, I concur too, man. obviously be the platoon sergeant back then, but as I concur, dude, I was so proud. Like, we didn't fly into any slacking ass neighborhoods, man. We were flying into the worst places in Diala River Valley, or wherever you want to do it. You're gonna make contact there. Bad guys are gonna be there, and then seeing these young kids, they were. I was the first platoon, but there were some goofballs. I had some goofballs in the tents. They were goofballs, and they were fun dudes, and they were wild. And the Easleys and the Hunters and all those guys, but man, you put them. As soon as they stepped foot off that helicopter, it was professionalism, and it was they were hunters, like James is saying, and and to be part of that. Like when I went over Alpha Company, I love Alpha Company. I was there for a while, but when I say there's different attitudes between the companies, I just felt it in Charlie Company when I got there, just the aggressiveness, and we're gonna do our jobs, and we're gonna do it right, and we're gonna make a difference. I felt that with that company, and just. And it's crazy, man. Like the boys, like Kevin says, the boys are just great. They're, we all still talk to them today, and they were just, they were just had such. You get back to the tents, man. They were just wild. They were just fun guys.
And you're just getting like me, Kevin, and Jerry's perspective. I mean, I was blessed enough that like the last couple of years I was around Don Fagiano, who was like, a specialist. I think when we deployed, he came in like a team leader, maybe acting squad leader for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Went on to have a great career in like. Civil affairs. Ran into him all the time. I ran into him in Afghanistan when I was, the 173rd. I ran into him, at Bragg when I actually was there at his retirement ceremony like last year. And he got me talking, and I loved hearing his perspective on things because it was just a little bit. It was great, and it was just a little bit different, and it just gave me another sense of like how great it was all the way around. Like there was hard times. There totally was, man, and and we lived through them together. But at the same time, like we all, like talking to him, and Matt Gonzalez, a guy, another guy, went out to a career in Hollywood, still lives out there. He had to leave a little bit early, talking about that perspective of the deployment. Like he had flat feet, and he fought them off for like 9 months. But you can't go dismounted carrying like 3 days worth of water for that long with flat feet.
Kept getting stop loss basically too.
Yeah.
And just sucked it up and did his job.
We had dudes that were stop loss. I'd love to spend another podcast just talking about how we failed. R4 Gen failed because we'd come back and break up teams that had just fought together for so long and send them to the 4 winds and didn't have any support afterwards, right? Didn't have a brother or sister on their left, to share, to lean on as they navigated that next whatever stage of their career or life. Chaden Rogers, great example. I connected with him. He's in Pennsylvania, and he got stop loss, and as soon as he got back and could get out and go, get married, started the rest of his life, but he never got his end of tour award. Dude was a squad leader for like 16 months in combat. I didn't know it.
And one of the better squad leaders, like a top-notch kid, man.
A hero. He was like one of my heroes. You know what I mean? Like when you're coming commander in a situation, you got a blown out knee. I was wearing a knee brace all the time. And so I was like, minimalistic when I went out and about, so I, stay in the fight. But but dudes like that were in the shit like every day, making contact. They were leading when I had to swap out platoon leaders. Like I didn't swap out as company commander. Kevin didn't swap out his first arm. We had to swap out some platoon leaders. They had to teach those new platoon leaders. And then here he is, didn't get his end of tour award. There's nothing to show for, nothing to tell these kids about why he is the way he is now in reaction to people not listening when he's giving on. I mean, I'm the same way. My anxiety when I tell my kids not to do something, they do it anyway, and they get hurt. It just triggers. When I say, hey, don't go here because there's lots of IEDs, and then people went there anyway and get an IED. That happened multiple times in my career. You tell people not to do something, they do it, and they die or get hurt. You know what I mean? But now I yell at my kids about it. They have to bear the brunt of that. Jaden's kids are the same way, probably. I don't want to speak for him, but he might be somebody to be useful to have on there just to kind of talk about life from that perspective. But there's 100 of those stories out there from our formation. Me and Kevin have our perspective, and be honest, like we have a hard time telling it. Sometimes it sort of feels unbelievable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like one of my best friends, Paul Staley, he's the G3 of the 18th Airborne Corps right now. But we were all there's about 5 of us were roommates in First Ranger Battalion. We're all like, we just want to go out, get commands, come back to the Ranger Battalion. Paul was the only smart one of the bunch. Went to Korea. We're like, well, we want to go to combat in command. You're going to go to Korea. You're just going to hang out, and you'll get a command of Ranger Company. You're just commanding twice in combat. Well, they deployed from Korea to combat.
Yep.
But he was a Ranger Company commander. Well, actually, I think he was on staff when we deployed. I saw him like, hey, Paul, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. He finished his regular company. Well, I was at first cav. Then he was in Ranger Battalion, waiting on a company. So he was there when we got there, and I had a conversation with him. Went home, came back. We were still there. Supposed to be a 4-month deployment. 5 months later, he came back. He's like, hey, how you doing? I was like, hey, I'm coming now, and Ranger, first, and doing great things for God and country. Did his 4 months, went home, came back 4 months later. He was targeting the Shia folks. At that point, because we had problems with the Shia and Mahdi's army and all that. And he was on, and then he went home, and he came back before we left. Did 4 deployments. And time we didn't want. And it's hard because it's unbelievable in the sense that people, and we're working for the same headquarters.
Yeah.
I mean, and they had a little bit different tempo. He was going out with a platoon and a headquarters most of the time. Kevin, I think the least we ever went out with was about 80. The most we ever went out with was 5, under our task board. To get go up a platoon, give some more things here and there to do stuff. But like, it was a different mission. Like I always say, we were taking over the old Ranger mission, the old raid recon ambush with the company kind of thing is kind of what we were doing. But it wasn't anything cosmic. We weren't fast roping out of the space shuttle. We were just doing basically shit to a very high standard.
So if I can, James, Kevin, from a leadership perspective, what was one of the harder things y'all had to deal with over there? Whether that
Communication.
What's that?
Jerry.
Yeah.
We had to deal with Jerry.
Yeah, well, okay. I didn't want to throw Jerry under the bus, but I mean, come on. We've all had to deal with him.
I mean, he's got to drag his ass along, but he's good. No.
Come on.
The only reason I say that because just a little bit of thing, Chris. We would have we'd get to the end of it's only 4 months. We get the end of the battalion or have a big barbecue.
Yeah.
They'd be like, oh, stay in another 4 months. So it only what I'm thinking about is what we dealt with al-Qaeda in Afghanistan is keeping the boys informed of what's going on, and sometimes it's very hard to do that as a leadership at a command team to, hey, this is the why. Explain the why. So I don't think these two had that problem with the company that they had, but some other.
I will tell you, Alpha Company, White Falcons was, we were at the 12-month mark, and everybody was getting extended to 16 in theater. The whole theater was getting extended to that month. And at that point, Alpha Company had missed 4 Christmases in a row.
Yep.
4. So ground war, I think they did Afghanistan, ground war, elections in 04, Telfar 05, deployed with us in November, missed 06. Now it's Christmas 07. They're missing their 5th Christmas in a row. And they're like, come on, man, give us a break. And we're making all these cases, we're building PowerPoints, we're sending up to God and everybody. They're like, come on, 5 Christmases. This is for some of these folks. We're trying to navigate that. And for other people, it's been multiple, whatever, and it's been 2 in a row for everybody at that point. Before the barbecue, me and Kevin were sitting around, was like, do we really want to go home early and let, and like everybody else is doing 16 months? And I mean, are they going to let us? If we keep pushing this, are they going to send us down to Baghdad and send somebody else up here to backfill us from Baghdad? One of the other task forces like before, or do we just want to stay doing this mission? Because it wasn't the same mission we started 12 months prior. Shit had escalated. We can talk about that here in a second. Things had escalated dramatically, and I'll explain. But we're at that 12-month mark, and we're like, we just need a volunteer, right? Me and Kevin were like, we just need a volunteer. And so we went to this guy, and we're like, hey, fuck it. We're going to talk to the company, and hey, this is our mindset. We can fight to go home, keep fighting this fight to try to go home because we've been doing some hard shit for 12 months and everybody should feel sorry for us. We should, or we could, while our brothers and the rest of Falcon Brigade is down in Baghdad doing the full 16 months. We're going to fight to go home for 12 months. Mm-hmm. We're just going to volunteer to extend and keep taking this fight. Do we believe enough in this mission in this fight and that we're having an impact that we would just want to volunteer. And like 100% across the board in the company, everybody's like, volunteer. So we went to the SCO and told him, and he was like, I don't know if he queried the rest of the squadron or what. I don't know. You can tell that story. Basically, he was able to go to McChrystal like, fuck, we volunteered to extend. But I mean, McChrystal came and, talked to us, and he was like, look, he's like, here's the bottom line. He's like, I can't really afford the political capital to go fight to get somebody in short notice to come do this mission. That's one part. The other part is I don't think anybody's training. We can train somebody to do it to the level you guys are right now to have the effects that you're having right now. Like, we need you. There's nobody that can do what you're doing right now. Yeah. That's two. And I think that, and really the, I mean, that's really, this is where like you see being it's like we're going to put somebody else at risk that's not trained up. We got somebody planned. We're going to get somebody at this, 4 months from now who's going to get through the same training that you guys did, coming in, Task Force Ghost. And, but like, we just don't have that right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're like, everybody, and when you look soldiers and especially paratroopers and I and tell them some hard truth like that, they're like, okay, fair enough. And everybody's kind of got over it and finished the barbecue and got back after it.
Yeah.
But things were a lot different at that point. Chris, like, we talk about like battlefield Darwinism, like, we did a lot of damage to the enemy. And as we were driving them back up, and especially the Yala River Valley campaign, the Ketchen series, like, that one, we lost some folks, a lot of folks, to be honest. Like, it's just, the enemy got better at trying to evade. They got better at using the terrain. Like, the Yala River Valley, I've never been there. It's like, you think Iraq is desert. The Yala River Valley doesn't feel like that. It feels like simple canopy jump.
Yep.
Like, humidity is always like 100% near the river, out to about, 1,500 to 2,500 meters, because that's where all the palm groves are. And the palm groves, if you haven't been in the Iraqi palm groves, I mean, it's kind of like I hate to say it, it's kind of like fucking trench warfare during World War I. It's just a series of irrigation ditches and palm groves and fucking fence lines that you have to cut through and fight through, and we spent a lot of time doing that. Our first casualties, Sandy Britt, John Hoxie, really, like, for our company, they hit an IED in one of these zones in the middle of the palm groves. The nearest LZ is like 1,500 meters away, probably. Triage on the sides, like, Hoxie's probably not going to make it. We're going to take Brett and we're going to take a small limit and start pushing them through the palm groves to this LZ and get them out, and like 2 hours later, like 1,500 meters in 2 hours carrying a litter with like 6 or 8 dudes. I can't remember. Brian Lebednik could tell you the full details because he had to live through it, as a platoon leader. Like, to get to the LZ, we ended up flying Hoxie off of a building, I think, off the middle of the road. We got some, a medevac with some serious balls to land in the middle of a road where there's fucking IEDs everywhere in this part of the, southern Baghdad. But like, these palm groves were no joke. I mean, they were obstacles in and of themselves, and very difficult terrain. Like, but like, to fast forward and the Yala River Valley being nothing but that, and that the enemy had progressed from, like IEDs on the roads to they were targeting us. You find an IED, it wouldn't just have like crush wire. One set of crush wire would be a fucking spider web of crush wire. And it would be like spider wire, like very, very fine stuff that like it took a very trained eye to identify. And our team leaders, like I telling a story during Dom, I remember him standing one point, like as we're attacking them, this one village where Eric Foster was killed, like, as we're, pushing through to get, to penetrate into the village to do our clearance operations, like he was standing there and walking every single person on that part of the patrol through this obstacle that was an IED, that was a spider wire that, like, if you stepped on any one of them, you're going to probably kill yourself and like 2 or 3 people around you. Yeah. And I did, how they even saw that shit was amazing. Yeah. But the fact that we just took it in stride at that point, but to like send another unit, brand new, not having to go through 12 months of learning to get to the point to operate like that, would have been wrong at very least, and kind of criminal.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It got to the point where the enemy was actually identifying us as the Black Ghost. And yeah. I think we took kind of, it had to do with the blacked out patch that we were rocking. And granted, there were other organizations that were rocking that, but those organizations were not staying on the objective, 48, 72, 96 hours like we were.
Yeah.
We were the marathon, they were the sprint.
Mhm.
And the reality of it was like, it was a very dangerous environment by the end. And I'll fast forward to our last mission in February. We're getting ready to redeploy. We had our unit that was replacing us, Task Force Ghost, and we had a couple easier targets that were lined up that just got weathered out because of the weather in February was just shit. And then there's this one hard target that was connecting 2 sanctuaries that the enemy had been fighting hard, like conventional forces couldn't touch it. And we're talking like miles and miles of depth to the obstacle belt.
Yep.
And then in a very hard target in the middle with another miles and miles on the other, all the way around this thing. We knew it was a command and control place. We knew it was a bad location. And then we had to do a rip throw mission there. And I don't think we have enough time to really tell that full story or whatever, Jerry. You guys tell me. But the bottom line was like, I'm briefing our higher 3, and they're like, this seems like pretty high risk. And I was like, there's not, I've been doing these for however many months. There's not a good way to do this one.
Yeah.
Like, it is high risk. Yes. I hate that we're doing this from a rip throw perspective. We've done everything we can to mitigate the risk.
Yeah.
But this is what we got to do. We're going to have to land on the X on this one. We're going to have to push in and secure a full hold deep, not on the edge, because we know it's going to be houseborne IEDs. At this point, the houseborne IED, was like probably about 6 or 8 months, and there's probably more before that, but I mean, it became a thing about 6 or 8 months prior to that. Whole SEAL teams getting wiped out, or not wiped out, but like everybody's wounded, bunch of dead, and they were hitting them kind of things, and the enemy's getting really good about how they were triggering these things, like scary, freaky shit that I didn't see again until fighting ISIS in 2017 in Mosul.
Can I jump in here real quick, James? So it was the kind of mission, Chris, that you didn't want to rip toe because you didn't want to have your whole complement of your war fighters on it, your experienced guys. You knew it was going to be bad.
Yep.
So and then we had the added ask to bring in, for lack of better words, observers.
Yep.
To watch how we conducted operations. And as a first sergeant, that shit drove me batshit crazy because I wanted, and James and I talked about it before the mission. I was like, I want my guys, because we need to have our guys, but you still have to do the rip toe, right? So
they need to try to see somewhere. And I'll be honest, like, it was a clusterfuck from like infill. Like, I will tell you, like, my CH-47 landed in a flooded rice field, and it was kind of like the one that Benoit was talking about during his podcast, where Keith was like coming out pissed because he's covered in mud. I got off the aircraft and I sunk up to my waist in mud. Like, we had 50 people on the back of this, maybe 55 on that one, on the back of the CH-47, got off, and we were all clustered within a basketball, like less than a basketball court. People couldn't move. People were losing their boots. This is the mid, we're on infill, not exfil, like Keith and we're on that one, like infill. And there could be one machine gun could have killed 50 of us.
Yeah. And this was a templated 72 or 96 hour mission. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was like a 5 day. That would end up being like 5 days. It was templated for 5 days. Because it was a big village and we're going to clear the whole thing.
This whole thing I'm not, your current mission that you're about to talk about here, you've been talking about, is way more complex, in my opinion. But Jerry, this smacks so much of that 07-08 173rd deployment. Now, granted, we didn't have the opportunity. We weren't given the option of volunteering to extend for the extra time. We were told straight up, hey, you're doing 15 months. But when you look at like what Chosen Company had to do with Wanat and why they went into Wanat versus waiting for First Armor to come in, you had, at least from my perspective, I was with Delta Company at that time. we're trying to do a rip with Delta Company. I can't remember the battalion that we were with, but we had several QRF missions that happened where I literally looked at my counterpart and said, no, you're going to fucking sit over there. I know you want to come with me, but no, I'm taking my guys. We are going to go do this QRF mission because right now I need my guys to go do this because it's our guys from the 173rd that have been ambushed, and we need to go do this.
Yeah.
So it's bringing back a lot of memories. But please, James, continue.
No, but I mean, the bottom line was like this town, basically they chased off all the locals. It was, it was a sanctuary. It was more like holding a line of communication in the center of their network. And their Emir was there. They had like, I don't know, probably a fire team at most, maybe a squad. But they had like built a nightmare, like hell on earth kind of scenario, right?
Exactly what it was.
Third platoon, third platoon leader almost died 3 times on infill. He lost his medic, CJ West was killed on infill. It was after they'd already found 2 houseborne IEDs where people had almost stepped on the initiators, which were just crazy scary, like shit that you just can't imagine. Go ahead.
Dude, our initial patrol base that we had templated, Cox rolled up to it because like he was running point on it after we got off Cox and I were on the a Blackhawk, and you guys were coming in on a Chinook, and initially Cox was about to roll into that bad boy, and I was like, hell no, dude. When was the last time we ever rolled up onto a freaking Iraqi compound and the gate was fucking open?
Yeah.
And he was like, that's a good point. That's a good point. And then that on the ground, we had to scramble to figure out where we were going to set up the company CP. And I believe it was actually your platoon, Jerry, who actually had established a foothold into a CP, and we came in and crashed with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, we spent the first night in a patrol base for the company CP, where we identified the next morning as a houseborn that just wasn't quite finished. Like they didn't have an initiator.
Yep.
Yet. You could tell they the shit. We're like, it's like, but we had like a platoon's worth of people in there because that's how you did it. You know what I mean? But like, we found 16 houseborne IEDs. The 16th one was when it went off, and we had about a half a platoon ride the roof in, or squad plus ride the roof in. 3 people killed instantly, about 20 casualties, in the surrounding area. Not the way you want to do a RIPTOA.
No.
Kevin had to evac the company commander that was replacing me because the dude he was a casualty. And he didn't take it well, and that's just putting it nicely. And the best thing to do is him get on a fucking helicopter and get out of there, Nothing on him, because nobody wants that for the fucking mission in theater. And it's going to be bad, and then you watch one of your squad leaders take a fist-sized hole through his chest,
Yep.
I showed up to that, James. I heard the explosion, man, and me and Hattie jumped on the radio, and I got to there. I think I got there right after, it blew up and we got there, man. It was just, I don't know how far you want me to go into this, but it was just chaos, disaster. It was dust was still, people were shell shocked, man, and I was just digging around.
There's IEDs, and then there's houseborne IEDs.
Yeah, it was just something. It was just, man. I still remember that. I remember Spooner doing what he had to do. First on Flippo was there. You had to get him on a bird as well. I think he got casually shell shocked or something. I'm not too sure, but
you got some shrapnel.
Shrapnel, man.
I mean, everybody that was anywhere within probably without an obstacle between them and that house took like cinder block and into their skin somewhere.
Yeah, and you guys are absolutely right, man. Because I had this, I'm this on the back of my neck. I had my hair was sticking up. Most of the guys were when we got there, man. It was just desolate. Nobody was around. It was just something you would not used to seeing.
And so that was like day 3, but like, on infill, CJ, people question, like we set up the storyboard and it was like 2 lieutenants, like the platoon leader and his replacement. I put the company XO with that platoon because to mitigate risk. Kevin went with another platoon and I went with the 3rd platoon. Kevin was with 1st, I think, and I was with 2nd on that one, and the XO was with 3rd. So it was like two platoon leaders, a medic, and then 2 XOs, and the medic in the middle was killed by command wire. People are like, why do you have 4 lieutenants together? It's like, well, this is how
we're going.
we're going, and this is how you mitigate risk. That was it wasn't my highest risk platoon. I was with that, or Kevin was with that. Not that it was just prior to the mission profile,
Sure.
and where they're landing their helicopters and the LZ, things like that. That's how we thought. We thought to buy down risk every chance we got.
Yeah.
And in that platoon there, I had my XO with them, and CJ was like on his first mission outside the wire.
Mm-hmm.
He just wanted to get his combat medical badge, and tragic story, but a lesson learned for everybody, in their careers at that point. Like, you don't take unnecessary risks.
Yeah.
You don't know, I spent a lot of time with his mom later down the road, and I could tell some of those stories later had he just passed like this year. But, I just think of it like the families and stuff, and like where all the gaps in these stories that hopefully this can start to frame for them.
Sure.
Not just the ones that lost people, but the ones that got broken people home with them, because it was really hard, and we didn't realize how much stress we were all carrying until after the fact. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but this mission in particular, it was, like I said, I didn't see anything as horrific until I started talking to the Iraqi counterterrorism forces as they were clearing through Western Missouri.
Yeah.
It was the same type of booby traps, layered, in-depth, supported by bad guys. The guys that we think did the command wire on CJ, the next day I was going out there to check out the site. Colonel Davidson was walking like 12 kilometers to kind of see what happened with his counterpart, to kind of look at it. We walk into like a scenario that we actually rehearsed at JRTC. We called it the Death House, where it was a compound with 55-gallon drums at the 4 corners with command wires going out to each one of those. The whole house was rigged to blow. Dudes were on the top. First dude we started shooting at was a sniper. Came up on the roof, started to shoot at the lead team leader. It was Madrano up front. I'm not positive on that, but
it was second platoon.
I had half a contact club with me. I think I had Kevin and Jimmy, and I mean, it was just, we ended up dropping a bomb on the house, and it was one of those things where like you realize how far you've come when you start peeling it back. Like the reaction at the point, the other platoons reacting to it. I think first platoon came in with a mortar tube, at the right perpendicular to be able to start dropping around.
Yeah, we were
in the compound as we pulled off as the bomb was coming in. He tried to flip it out the back, and a mortar air bursted right on his fucking beak. Like people.
They were that good.
They're like, I was sitting in the talk. I saw the dude, that motherfucker, trying to run out. I saw him get disintegrated by a mortar, like a split second before the 2,000 or the 1,000-pound bomb decimated the whole house. But that's a company operate. I didn't tell them. I was like, first was like, hey, we're in position, ready to fire. Yes, do that. They were anticipating the need.
Yep.
Before I ever said anything.
Well-oiled machine. Yeah.
And Chris, like, the whole thing was a setup. I mean, like the sniper on the roof, the AK-47 fire we were receiving, the RPK. The enemy's intent was to die on the X by bringing us into the courtyard, which was which had that spider wire IED stuff laid out, and we just had the common sense to say, all right, hey, let's back off of this fucker and let's just drop this building.
Yep.
But again, I go back to AWG stuff. Yeah. Like if we had not had that training, and if we had not had, we would have gone in and done Battle Drill 6, and we would have lost probably a platoon or a platoon.
I mean, Sammy saw. I go back and I told him about it. Like, remember, you guys had like some weird call sign, or something that you said, to get everybody out of the building so you could drop it, and he remembered that. He remembered that, and we did, and we had those things that we just communicated to be able to react in those scenarios. Like, this is, whatever the code word is, everybody knows. Stop what you're doing. Get the fuck back.
Landslide.
Yeah. and in this case, prevented even bigger tragedy from happening.
Yeah.
But the Iraqis were happy because that was the dude that was on the top rope of the sniper rifle was the actual emir of that entire region. But the Iraqis were pumped because they found him and they knew based on the way he had marked his Dragunov, whatever.
Hey, James, I don't want to get too far away from a comment you said earlier, because I'm willing to go as long as you want to go on this one. But you mentioned being able to tell the story, not just for the people we lost, but the people that came back broken that can't necessarily tell the story, right? Yeah. And that's one of the things that Jerry and I that's one of the reasons why we're doing this.
No, and I wouldn't be here if Dom Fagiano hadn't asked me to come speak in this way at his retirement.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell the story to my family.
Yeah. Hey, can I say something real quick that it bothers? I like going back to that houseborn IED, man. That was like one of the toughest things I dealt with in that last mission, man. And one of the things, without getting too graphic here, like we kind of, our platoon got kind of tasked with kind of helping clean up some of that stuff, and me on that last mission set, man, and we knew it was the last one, and I there was remains of guys around, and I was trying to like do my best. I don't know what was in my head, man, but I was like, I have to do my best to make sure I pick it all up, man. And
you did a hell of a job too, Jerry, man.
And I had to like put these remains in like MRE boxes, dude, and you couldn't tell whose it was or what it was, and I just did the best I can, and then. That night we called in a bird, and I just walked up to the bird and I put these, remains on the bird, man. And to me, it's like, dude, like, dealing with that and seeing that last mission, man, it was hard, dude.
Yeah. I mean, I was over there too, Jerry, after you guys did the hard work up front, like you and Kevin, like, getting the big parts on the aircraft, but I was still picking up this size chunks of things that it wasn't just soldier, it was our brothers, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's Miguel, Baez.
Yeah.
John
I was like,
man.
Right. I was like, I will not leave any of that shit. I won't not.
I love those
leave
guys.
any of that to the enemies, man. I loved it.
It was family that we were picking up.
But James, to your point, right? I don't know that I've ever told my family the stories that we've shared on this, which is one of the reasons why I love doing it with Jerry, because I feel safe, even though this is going out to the world in theory and whatever.
I know, he's like a big fucking teddy bear. You know what I mean? He always has been.
Right. He has been. But hopefully hopefully this does allow you and future people to be able to do that comfort, because again, at some point in time, maybe I get my family on here to actually watch one of these, because my wife has never ever even listened to one of the episodes. But I've never told her about my time in Afghanistan or my time in Iraq. I told her a little bit about the last deployment just because it was so publicized and whatnot. But it's hard to cross that barrier.
But it helps. But it helps, like I talked to Hattie West, right? Like, and I didn't know this. Nobody knew this, but like they didn't know what happened on the mission with CJ. I just knew it was the last mission and he was dead. And they weren't allowed to see the body. It was a closed casket, but they were like, there was just so many things that the Army got wrong at that point. And his sister wrote a book called The Great American Dick Bunch, which about the whole thing, right? Like they probably could have done an open casket with the upper torso. He was that much intact, but the bottom was gone. But they talked about like what it took to just get an understanding. Like they didn't get a storyboard on what happened to their son and brother until about 15 years after the fact. And when I saw Hattie, and I want to say it was after I left battalion command. So it's like 2019. I saw her, downtown. I just reached out to her, and she just happened to, one of those cosmic things that happens that you're just like, and I just can't describe to you the grace that which she treated me about this whole thing. Like it was just so humbling, to lose your son and still be able to, I just can't. But just for them to understand, like, it was our last mission. I went to Miguel Baez's funeral in New York City. His dad was a Vietnam vet.
Yep.
He's like, why was my son out on his last mission? Didn't translate.
Yeah.
We're all were.
Yeah. I'll always remember his face, man. Even when I was taking him out of the rubble, man, for the rest of my life, dude. So it just sucks, man. But James, me and Kevin were talking about. Do you remember how many bombs we dropped on that mission?
Oh God, it was a
we
lot.
Winchester the B-52 on that village.
That was the first time I ever felt like, holy shit, like everything was just constant.
Dude, like everything, I have to give Carol freaking props on that, man, because he racked and stacked everything from like 105s to freaking 155s. Like when we finally decided to pull off that objective, which I'm glad freaking, the leadership realized, hey, look, it's if you just continue on, all you're going to do is put soldiers at risk.
Yeah.
I'm glad that, Colonel Davidson realized it, and whoever his bosses were at the time, that this place just needed to be leveled.
Yeah.
Because there were no civilians there. I mean, you got to understand this, Chris. Like, there was no civilians there. None. The first night alone, we found 14 house-borne IEDs, and we freaking found, like, I want to say like 20 roadside IEDs in the first night.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember James was like, "Don't fucking go anywhere. Like, stay still, stay in position."
I did.
So
I reported that was and I'll say it now because I'm retired and fuck it if they want to get mad at me. But I basically called it clear, and it wasn't. I mean, we still had about 20% of the houses to probably clear. 20 to 30% just wasn't worth it. I knew we killed all the bad guys. Like that second day, somebody, the last houseborn, it could have been a command detonated, because you could see those houses from like 10 kilometers away.
Yeah.
If you see a soldier on the roof and you knew that was one of your houses and you just dialed the number and blew it up, that could have happened. We don't know. We'll never know. Our guys are well trained, but you can't, just fucking bad guys get one every once in a while.
Yeah.
But I think it's possible somebody could have seen it from a distance and commanded it, because we got people on the roof as we normally would do in that situation to provide overwatch as we continue to clear whatever. But at that point, like, I just basically was like, we're fucking, we're done. We cleared, fuck off. Like that's where we were at. And all the houseborne IDs that we identified up to that point, we marked as targets and we blew them up. I mean, you can think about if you've ever been on an Iraqi compound and you see how they build their roofs out of rebar and concrete and how much that weighs, and you take a large, a normal ranch size home of rebar and concrete and you watch it fly into the air at 500 feet, flipping end over end, the roof. Like the whole house every wall was packed with homemade explosives. Yeah. It wasn't a 2,000 pound bomb doesn't do that. We've seen enough of those. Not even a 500 pound or 500, 200. It doesn't matter. The house was entirely packed with explosives. Mm-hmm. And that was, just one of many in that scenario. And
honestly, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier. With the JRTC stuff, where like we were doing this and we were not that far away from it, but we knew it had to be done. Like we weren't like 2 kilometers away when this was happening. We were like 600 meters away.
I was even 600 meters from that because you really couldn't go much further than that. You were stuck in flooded rice fields. Like I think the enemy had flooded all those fields around it too to make it even that much fucking harder. You know what I mean? It was just like some sick, demented bastard like came up with this objective and made it a reality. You know what I mean? Like that's really what it felt like. Yeah. In retrospect. We did our part. I feel like we got the people that we want. We killed the people. We killed the mirror. The Iraqi army that was trying to get there to hold that place spent 5 days trying to clear an obstacle belt. And I think there's it's either a 20/20 or 60 minutes where they had an embedded journalist team with that team that was trying to push through that obstacle belt. And they did like 5 days until their number one IED clearer dude died. And they finally called it. And they turned around and went home. They never got there. That's the tragedy of it. Yeah. You know, they never got there. The whole point of us taking that and holding it was for them to get there, to create a pathway, to repopulate it, to deny it as a sanctuary. And they just couldn't, because it was just that hard of a nut to crack, you know? And yeah, just, I mean, but that was, you know, not a good one to end on. But I mean, the people, the company throughout, like, you know, that just, I don't know, me and Kevin probably didn't do it justice as far as like just talking to the level at which they would react to things. You know, I could tell you the story about like the same mission where Eric Foster was killed. Like I did 20 storyboards in the first like 36 hours on that one. And to the point where General Odierno flew from Baghdad out to FOB Normandy to come as close to firing that brigade commander as possible, because he said there was nothing going on there, blah, 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 blah. We land there, everything was going on there. Like, everything fucking imaginable.
I think I remember that too, because like we were doing a resupply, and there was a sergeant major from an organization that jumped off the bird. I don't know where he came from, just came out of nowhere. Yeah. And I think this is when we were finding, like, we found the big caches, we're finding, you know, Chris, we were finding hostages as a conventional unit. Like, that's insane. Yeah. You know, so like for us to like, you know, get out there, and I had to go and patrol this guy, right? And we were like going through the pond, we were finding shit, like we were like 5 feet, couldn't find shit. He's behind me. He's like, who the fuck? He's like, how are you? Like, he's just pissed off about like all the shit we're finding, and you can see the blimp from the FOB, like from where we're at. Yeah. And he's just, I'm like, sorry, Major, I'm just patrolling. Like, I'm just doing what I gotta do. Like, don't yell at me. Like, we're out here being proactive, right? Like, you need to go see those guys, man. But he was not happy with like what we were just pulling out of there, man. Like, he was happy in regards to what we were doing. He just was not happy with like
that people were reporting that everything is fine here. Things were I mean, but Chris, just to bring that point, like 20 storyboards, like, here's what a storyboard was like. Like, you know, 9 o'clock the next morning, bad guys are doing biz on, take a sniper round, goes over like the guy, he misses the guy he's trying to shoot, who's like eyeball defilade on the top wall of the RCP, hits the dude in the back plate on the other side of the house. You know, kid's fine. Reynolds, I think it was Reynolds. I'm trying to remember. Reynolds hit one in the back plate. God bless body armor. But, you know, that was attacking one platoon with the CP, you know. That sniper team and an observer were trying to move out and get away from it. Another platoon QRF is reacting.
That's us. That was my platoon.
Jenny, lead team leader with the freaking saw, like dragging off. Like, it was like the full kit, man. Like, you're gonna build a Russian sniper team with observer. The observer had binos, an AK with a silencer. The dragging off was like, you know, and it was like ticked on. It had ticks on it from prior where it had successful attacks. Like, still, they were making, as they were doing SSE, they were making contact. We had like some Navy EOD with us. They rigged everything to blow on the objective. They pulled off, blew it. Maybe 3 hours later, a van drives by, shoots some RPGs, some RBKs, and all this stuff at our CP again. That's the only known point they had. Another platoon reacts to it, sets up a reverse drive-by. The van's trying to head back down to their other village that is Hembus. This is one we talk about later, where, you know, that we do another follow-on mission. They do a reverse drive-by on these guys. They could hear them cheering in the van as they were driving by after just shooting RPGs. They just dust the entire element, you know, but I mean, this is the storyboards that are coming out. It's like, here's what we're doing. Here's, you know, we're winning, we're dominating, we're killing the bad guys. I mean, it felt good, you know, as a commander to just watch it. I didn't do anything.
Yeah, that sniper almost took Fuzzy out, because it was the same day. Like, Fuzzy stepped right in the doorway as the round hit the top of the. Yeah. But like they literally came around the corner, Chris, and they were they were like 2 feet.
I think we had a name for it, for the guy's face, but
and the saw was like, oh yeah.
I mean, it was like Taco Head or something like that. But I mean, we just not good. But I mean, but I mean, that's just at the level we were at, you know, and I don't like, I just like, it's just, we were graced with a lot of things that set us up for success. We were very much a learning organization, like Jerry said earlier. We were hard on ourselves and worked hard to get better all the time. I mean, we were training in between missions all the time. We were doing better and better rehearsals. I mean, we got stories where we did one mission, we did a 4-hour raid that was like fucking textbook. I think we even had the bad guy, but that's another story. But like just the beauty of things on how things would unfold over time was great. And like, and it wasn't just us. Like we were bringing the squadron along with us. You know, ACO was doing. You know, Jerry didn't show up on train to Charlie Company.
Yeah. I
mean, we were grateful to get Jerry. I mean, he was kicking ass down there, but it was time for him to be a platoon sergeant.
Yeah. I was so thankful. I mean, looking back on it, nobody ever wants to leave company. I was in Alpha Company since 2003. But like,
what did I say? Did I say something stupid?
No. Being blessed to come over with you guys is like, you know, I that platoon that I got put into, you know, thanks Kevin for putting me there, but it just, you know, I carried on after the deployment with those guys and growing with those guys. It was a cool opportunity, man. And thank you guys for doing that. But
yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, I'm not trying to wrap this up, but you always want to kind of end on a high note. So I want to, Kevin, I'm going to ask you first, and then James, I ask you. Somebody always does something stupid. Something funny always happens somewhere. What's one of your best memories from this deployment, Kevin?
Dude, there's so many, man. Honestly, a lot of these things freaking run together, Ben. But I'll be honest with you. I think one of my best memories was like, I guess the guys had heard it was my birthday. Probably it was an ambush where like James freaking let everybody know. And, you know, I got silly stringed and balled up and, you know, like they rolled me up and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, the normal freaking hazing stuff. But that's probably one of my highlight memories of being part of this organization. But what I would be remiss in, you know, saying if I don't say it, and I feel like, especially if this is going to be a one series type of thing, like I want my guys to know, and I want James to know, and I want Jerry to know that there was not a night and a day that I was not praying for every single one of you guys. I know I might not have represented myself as somebody who was like religious, but I've always had a really strong walk with God. And I really feel like God's hand of protection was over all of you. And I am appreciative of that. And I know that my mom was praying. I know that other people's moms were praying. And even though it was we lost some guys, we lost some heroes. I would be remiss in not letting you guys know, because I'm sure a bunch of you guys are going to be watching this, that there was not a night, not a day that Kevin Spooner was not praying over every single one of you. And I love every single one of you guys. Hell, if you were not even in the unit and you were serving during that time frame, love you too, because you know what, you were seeing some shit. You were just seeing shit differently. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. All right, James, what you got?
You know, I mean, I got tons of funny stories, and you know, it's hard to pick one to end on, but like, you know, gosh, I'm sorry, I'm just torn here. Like, Kevin, it's hard to follow that first, and I agree with you. You know, and every step of the way, like, you know, there's you know, Doc Schlacke, after he had the house blow up in his face, and he watched a piece of door frame spin and just hit him and wrap around him, and he's like, you know, God loves me. You know, like, God loves me, man. Like, I should not be here right now. Like, that door frame should have cut me in half. You know, and you stand right next to the dude, took this nice chunk of metal through his chest, and you know, it's like, just God loves me. And you know, and you know, God loved the guys that we lost too.
Yep.
And when I hear their stories and I see their families, like, you know, Hattie West will tell you, like, or she would have told you, like, you know, that it was like one of those things, like, her son prepared me. for this, eventuality. And she swears she heard his voice when she's like, there's a chaplain knocking at the door.
Yeah, I mean, guys, if you're watching this,
yeah. Sorry. But she was like, his voice was like, now's the hour, Mom.
Yeah.
You got to mom up. My sisters aren't going to handle this well.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
man.
That's kind of but I do think there's a lot of times where, funny stuff happen and things you just wouldn't expect. But at the end of the day, like, shoot, I look back at the times we had between missions. I mean, there's times we'd sit there and all play video games. Like,
I know.
And I remember playing with Big Lou, our sniper, best fucking sniper I've ever served with. Like, be on the shot. Like, General Miller asked him to teach his son on how to shoot. Had access to the entire, Joint Special Operations Command, and he's like, I want you to teach my son how to shoot. And we were playing Call of Duty, and that dude, like, if he had a sniper rifle on his inventory, he was just murdering folks. We were like, that's not even, like, you just, like, quick skilled me. That's not even, and he's like, and he was just like, I'm trained. Like, he was a master of his craft. We had so many folks, like Jimmy Cox with a mortar tube, Doc Shalaki as a medic,
Boom Shalaki.
Ozog with a Raven, I mean, the number of masters of their craft that we had at our disposal by that point was just like the charts. And that's the most deadly. I always tell people, it's like, someone who's a master of their craft is the most deadly thing on the battlefield. Doesn't matter if you're Musashi with a blade, Jimmy Cox with a fucking 60mm mortar tube and handheld. You're gonna do some. He had a dude on a boat going across the river.
Yeah.
I don't know the timing.
Yeah.
Hit him. Airburst right on the dude's beak.
1,300 meters away.
Yeah.
Single charge.
That's some trigonometry shit right there.
Not trying to make Jimmy's head big, and I just think because he's 6'5" and goofy that I think it's fun to highlight that even somebody like him can be successful.
Yeah.
I
also got to give a shout out to the engineers. Like,
Grizz! Oh my God, Grizz and Osmolsky.
The amount of shit that those guys had to rig to blow up that whole deployment.
Oh God,
was insane.
I finally got my good happy ending. Okay.
Yeah.
So our higher headquarters, 06 Commander. This is a mission. It was in the town. We nicknamed it Little or Big Asshole. There's Little Asshole, which was south. Big Asshole was north. The name to pronounce it was just too hard for anybody, even native. Even our linguists were like, works for us. Big Asshole is better than us trying to describe it. But like, we're going in there. It was like the third time we went in there. SEALs had just lost like half a team because they didn't read our reports. Love them. SEALs must not be able to read them. I'm not making fun of them. I feel bad for their casualties. Didn't have to happen. But we had task force commander with us, his sergeant major. We're going in. All three platoons are in contact. Like on intel, all three platoons are in contact. Like I'm walking, managing contact, and we're moving in. AC-130 some folks, don't see AC-130 some others. Get to the what's going to be the initial company patrol base. We walk in, and like 2 minutes later, I'm standing right next to the commander and his sergeant major. Doc Shalaki walks up and hands me a Green Bay, like 32-ounce coffee mug full of coffee. This is after we infilled for it was like a 2.5 hour infill from the fixed wing transload site. So we flew fixed wing to one location, got on some birds, and flew like 2.5 fucking hours. And it was cold. It was like late October in Iraq, fucking cold.
Yeah.
To the point where, like, we're getting ready to go, and I'm like, hey, you guys might want to put on some snow gear. And the commander's like, really?
I think that was like,
and the sergeant major was like, I'll take that. We gave him, but they froze their fucking, like, I watched the commander sit across from me. I had my headset on, just watching him just freeze his ass off. I love him. And I loved how he supported us. It wasn't Miller, it was Irwin. But, we fly in there. And they're freezing their ass off. And Doc Shalaki, within 2 minutes of me sitting there, he jet boils the coffee and hands it to me. And I'm like, they're looking at me like, parties at work? Like, well, he's the fucking PA. He doesn't. You guys like him? They're like, yes, we would. Yes, we would. It was like, well, you got to have a canteen. Do you have a can? They didn't have canteen guns, so we had to figure some shit out.
Hey, if I remember, that was one of the rules of Contact Club, or at least a deviant, or a part of Contact Club's rules.
That was Heat. That was the Heat Club rule.
Yeah.
Actually.
Oh, Heat Club. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. That was the Heat Club rule.
Dude, I remember that play. That was Christmas. That was like Christmas Day. Christmas.
It was late. Yeah, I just remember that like they flew out before the sun went up. It was a full moon. They flew out of the cemetery, and they were like, "This is fucking surreal. Like, what did we just witness?" It was like 3 platoons in contact. You know, we fought through it. 8130's got like, why didn't 8130? It's like, well, they're guarding that shrine over there. Like our understanding of the situation, combined with our tactics, combined with our SOPs, the smoothness of that we made of like 3 platoons just navigating contact, like on the move, was glorious in one way, funny in the sense that like they were just kind of shocked at, you know, how good we were at that point.
Hey, correct me if I'm wrong, James. I don't think there was a holiday, a single holiday that we were there for that, you know, like 06 through 08, that we were not out in the bush somewhere.
The picture that I gave Jerry that he used for the podcast thing was on Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christmas photo of me, you, and Doc Kalaki. So
yeah.
Is that the village that had like the no man's zone like between the north and south?
Yes.
So basically the enemy was being basically going to Iran, buying like shitty mines and they built a minefield between them and I could get into but to make a long story short, they were trying to earn their way in to the sanctuary by creating a scenario by which the Sunnis wanted them to protect, they needed Islamic State of Iraq to protect them from the Shia that were just south of them, protecting the fifth oldest shrine in Shia Islam, like 500 meters on the other side of this wadi / it would be a wadi if it was desert, but it was palm grove.
It was palm grove, yeah.
I mean, Kevin, that's like 2 missions prior to that. Kevin was like throwing hand grenades at people like in the palm grove. We don't
want to be down, but we took a casualty that operation too. Like,
we
I don't know
did.
if you guys remember?
We did.
It was inside that belt because I remember going in there trying to get that casualty out.
Well, he fell through the roof. They put a sheet or a towel or a rug over a hole in the roof, and he stepped on it, broke. And then
no, you're right. But we also did take.
Also had a hard exit.
You're right. We did take a mine casualty too. So like
that was later. That was like 2 days later. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to go in there and get this kid, and I remember him laying on the road, man. And I looked over, and there was like
it was Doc Mazzoni, and
there was like bouncing Betty.
I mean,
sticking all over the place.
So so I mean, these were conventional mines that had been, the Iranians had provided the insurgents that had carried over donkeys over the border and helped build this obstacle belt. Doc Mazzoni, that was tragic because I love my medics. Like to say I love my medics is like the most gross understatement, like that I can, like, and seeing Doc Mazzoni, he had a colostomy bag for fucking half a year after that.
And that dude was badass too.
He played so many fucking, he was there like at so many bad times,
Do you guys remember who the FO was? There was an FO that got hit too, because I remember to this day I don't know who he is, because I remember it was me and somebody else, and I had him over my shoulder. We were moving to the cemetery to put him on the bird, and he was like, "Hey, Sergeant, your hand is in my wound." And I was like, it was like some shit fucking from a movie.
Yeah, I can't think of who he is.
He was a young kid. I can't remember. He was an FO.
He was.
Or something like that.
I'll think of it, but
I
can figure it out. But I mean, bottom line is like that's from a happy memory standpoint, just like seeing people that of that caliber coming from that organization, witnessing what we were at that point was just, and the fact that they would come out and do that with us every once in a while.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just them. I mean, McChrystal was on multiple of our objectives. Yeah. Miller, multiple objectives. Thomas, those guys were all supporting us, throughout this whole thing, and very grateful for their leadership throughout. I mean, just can't say enough. about.
It meant a lot. It meant a lot, and I feel like the guys got it too. Like when you get that kind of senior leadership that actually goes out on the X with you,
Yeah,
that it means something.
Yeah, I mean, it makes your pucker factor as a leader go way up. Like I'm just, God, let me get him off.
Oh, I never puckered, dude.
Yeah.
You know,
I let you take the pucker. I never puckered, man. I knew
Yeah,
I knew our guys
yeah.
were going to do great.
I'll tell you, man, like I ran into when me and Chris were closing Afghanistan, I ran into General Miller was obviously the man there. And
Yeah.
we were base command team at camp what was it? Where were the base with
Dwyer, Seal Dwyer.
Yeah, and he showed up, man, and I didn't have any conversations before with him, and when I took him in, I was like, "Hey, sir, do you remember Task Force Falcon?" And he's like, "Oh yeah," like he like talked to me for a while, and then we had this briefing, right, and there was some special guys in there, and they were doing their thing, and he went through and he talked about everybody's like, hey, this guy is whatever, he's a great team member, operator, blah blah blah, and he looked at me and he's like, he talked about Task Force Falcon, and and to me that meant a lot because he still remembered that, and he still remembered the casualties he took. Do you remember that stuff? And he took time to talk to me. It was a conventional battalion CSM there, but he took his time to sit next to me and we talked about it. And he said it meant a lot.
Yeah. So hold on, I got to show you something. Show and tell. Sorry. So I got a picture of me with him in front of one of these at his house when he was the commander at the maneuver center.
Yeah.
Yep.
So basically, like after that deployment, they sent some of those prints down. I guess Adamczyk got them. He gave me that one. That's number 325.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sweet.
Nice.
Signed by all the folks that are in the photo. But like he was a 325 guy. Miller was a 325 guy.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, back in the days.
When I was a battalion commander, my sergeant major retired. He was there. Or no, I'm sorry. When my sergeant major's dad retired from the command, he was there, and he wore, that's what he wore as his regimental crest.
No
that's
shit.
awesome.
Was coming to my battalion, got diverted because I had too many Rangers in my battalion when I was a battalion commander, but got diverted. But he's like, why is my son not in your battalion? I was like, I'm a 325 guy. I want my son to be in. I was like, it was taken out of my hands, sir. I was like, my boss, I had too many Rangers because I would always send people back. If they wanted to stay, I was like, go, I encouraged them, and I just had more, whatever. I mean, Kevin, you tell me, I sent my company XO from combat to Ranger, Ranger battalion, or Ranger school. I mean, Dunbar, who ended up going serving, sent him as a specialist. And these guys, we didn't just send them from that mission; they'd go beyond a graduate and come back.
Oh yeah.
No, Jerry and I had the same policy there at 431. Is if you wanted to go and you could prove that you deserved to go, then you went without a doubt. Didn't matter what was going on. So.
Yeah, there was no gatekeeping in that company, man. Like if guys wanted to progress and wanted to do something different, like we would support them 100%, and like I again, man, like I can't say it enough, man. The dudes were dudes, and
I mean, just look at how. I mean, we could just go down the line and talk about where these guys that were E5s, E6s, E7s. Where I mean, Jerry's like crushed life after he left.
How many sergeant majors? I need to actually go back and do the freaking math on that. But like, there's a lot of sergeant majors that came out of that company.
Sergeant major. I mean, Dunbar would have kept going. I mean, they gave him posthumously sergeant major, but I mean, he was a PFC at the start of that deployment.
Yep.
Yeah.
When I was back in 2017, I was in Iraq, in south of Mosul, and he tried to link up with me, but I was in a meeting. I couldn't get there, and then he died like 2 months later. But he was like, I just look back at that and like, fuck, I could have, saw him, and he was like an EA, doing some of the most, all the things that you would, everybody hears about, and just doing great things for God and country. But there's some, tons of those guys, and that just, if you go peel in and back, that's where they started the experience. And a lot of them, they had to leave. Unfortunately, they had to leave the 82nd because there was a gap, you know. It's like R4Gen. Where R4Gen failed us was like bring people in, and like the people that came in, the gap between them and the people that were there was just so huge that the people that were there before just like had to run away. You know, they couldn't get back.
And I also I don't want to be a Debbie Downer on this one part, but I don't, in my perspective, like it was hard for when you guys got out of the seat, man. Like it was hard hard as a company to come back to the 82nd from a mission like that. Like there was a lot of resentment. There was a lot of like, hey man, you guys think you're fucking special. There was like a lot of that. You guys switched out. We had a new command team. A lot of the guys, you know, they went on to do great things, but they're just like, yeah, I can't. I mean, just the way it is.
Civil affairs, PSYOPs, SF, they all benefited. I mean, even the civilian world benefited. Some of these guys that had been stop loss went out to, you know, Alex Walzer went out, got a master's in, you know, bioweapon, you know, he's out like helping fight bioweapons for the nation, you know, he was like a E5, E6, you know.
I wonder if Walzer is the cause of COVID.
I'll ask
Might
him.
Be.
That was a joke.
Like, you know.
Shit, man. Old Rip's made Sergeant Major.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good, man.
I would tell you, like, I'll ask for this, but like the aftermath, I think we probably deserves its own episode to kind of talk about it, because, you know, it's like when you come off a scenario like that, like, and I try to explain to people, like, in a nutshell, I came home, I tried to get my cable turned back on, and they're like, it's going to be 3 weeks. I don't remember what I said to the cable people, but it wasn't nice. And then I called the other cable providers, and like, they're like, it's going to be like 6 weeks. So I called back the first cable provider. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just came off like a 16-month deployment. Is uncalled for. Please, whatever you can get out of here would be great. You know, that was like in a nutshell, like carrying some of this trauma along. But the calls, I got calls from E6s to lieutenants crying in the middle of the night, you know. I mean, that because they just, you know, and it's in retrospect,
that kind of pisses me off, James, because I never got those calls.
I think it's because I was nice and candy ass and you're like hard one. But you know, but whatever, I got calls, and I think you helped Jimmy Cox out. Sorry, Jimmy. Believe that. E6 not to be named, you know, on one scenario, like you helped. Don't come pretend that you didn't.
No, what I'm saying is, like,
he made Sergeant Major though.
He did. And I actually got to serve with him in AWG for a little bit too. So like,
you know, I mean, you defer. They call it deferred moral injury. This was like a term that, like the soft guys, deferred moral, or you know, delayed or deferred. Like you just put it in a box. I'll deal with it later. Then you get home and it's like add alcohol. The box comes open sometimes, you know, and that's the problem. That was the problem with R4Gen. That like, I'm glad I had a cell phone that I hadn't changed since 2000. You know, and people knew to reach me, and I was able to talk to folks. You know, when they called. You know, and there was times and you know, where folks would text me, I didn't know who they were, and thought it was a joke. You know, and apologize later to them in person, but. You know, but like there was people were experiencing trauma at different timelines.
Yeah.
You know, and all that type of stuff, and it doesn't get talked about enough. And there's people, you know, easily, fuck, man, like that dude. Jerry, you mentioned me. I mean, the character, like that dude was like, he was like a platoon hero. He was like beyond, like, I don't want to use the word mascot, but I mean. You know, we did like some award ceremonies afterwards. I called him the Special Rocks of Charlie, and you know, I gave him runner-up, the sexiest man in Charlie Company, behind for Sergeant Spooner. But you know, easily was like, dude, the heart of a lion too. You know,
it was.
And we had one time where we were doing combatives prior to deployment, and he, you know, like platoon on your knees and getting people to tap out. Once people tapped, they were out. He had a dude on each arm and an arm bar and a guy in the rear naked choking. The dude still wouldn't tap. And he was like a hero to us. But he didn't, you know, when he went home, I don't know what he walked into, you know?
Yeah, he struggled. He struggled a lot.
He didn't get treated the same. Like imagine going from like he was like our brother, our hero. Like and I mean, I could tell you stories about him as a machine gunner gunning down like dudes in the Southern Belt as they tried to run. Like, and then people not really understanding what they got back, and then not being able to bridge that identity. It's like, would you want to go back after that? After like you have this place where you belong, people treat you a different way than you grew up, and then you go back to this community that doesn't really understand that you're not the same person that left.
Yeah.
And that's a hard story to tell, because there's not a lot of you're dealing with evidence of it that's like circumstantial at best, but you kind of in your heart you kind of feel it for him, because Ely wasn't necessarily sexy, and to us he was sexy,
Yeah, I think me and Kevin were talking about that, James. I don't know how many guys, like you got Don Moore, you got Easley, you got who was the guy that went overseas and fought with the Peshmerga.
Jeremiah.
A Raygun operator, Hunter.
Jeremiah is his first name.
Jeremiah Woods. Yeah.
Yeah.
He called me a couple times when I was a brigade ops sergeant major, man. He was struggling too. So
yeah,
it's crazy, man. It's nuts.
Yeah, he had cancer throughout his body too.
Yeah.
That's another thing.
There were a lot of guys that happened to, that there were like things that happened, a lot of survivors of it, but like, you got to think about all the shitholes that we actually went into, and like the exposures and I'm not a freaking tree hugger at all, but like when you put people in freaking shit pits and that's where they live, and they're dealing with chemicals and all that kind of stuff, and caches of unknown substances. They weren't in like MWD type of things, but there was shit there that we didn't know. They were exposed to stuff, and we just had a lot of guys that came back and had to deal with a lot of like cancers, tumors, and shit like that, and they had to deal with it. And
I mean, it was an absurd amount of cancer early on, like within like 3-4 years, and I mean, it was, looking back, it's just like, how do you, and you wouldn't know if it wasn't for social media, you probably wouldn't even know.
Yeah,
you wouldn't. Yep, if it wasn't for that, we would never know, man.
I mean, we burned it. I mean, Chris, I'm not joking on thermites, man. We burnt a lot of stuff, and you're healing it.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to leave anything for the enemy. We wouldn't leave our own batteries. We wouldn't,
Sure.
We're burning lithium. Even says, don't burn this. Well, no, because they could use it to power an IED. So we're burning
the nitric acid, do you think we left that? No, we blew that shit up.
I mean, to say we walked through shit, like, it's not an exaggeration. Like, that was the bet on Hembus when Eric Foster was killed. Like, I got to describe his mission real quick. Like Foster was with, and I know Keith, I sent Keith Benoit like a message. I'm like, he was with mechanics, cooks. That was the platoon he went, like we talk about mitigating risk, like as a leader, he went with the highest risk platoon.
Yeah.
It was made up of mechanics and cooks and everything else, because we were trying to isolate this large village surrounded by palm groves. And when I say, like, I was on the first lift of the assault, so we did like a lift 1, went in, isolated, lift 2 assault, and then lift 3 assault. It was kind of like 2 serials of lift 2. I landed, got off, RPGs flying out of the wood line, like out of the palm groves at the next lift coming in, exploding behind the aircraft, like kind of shit. Like it was not our standard mission. And Foster was in there. I mean, and we pushed in, like we penetrated along a creek, which was used as an irrigation ditch by the village, more or less. Yeah. I mean, it was shit. The whole thing was shit. But it was provided us cover. And when I say there's tracers going across the top, there was tracers going both ways. Good guy, bad. I mean, the isolation almost was trying to defend itself against folks. I mean, it was absolute chaos. But when I say, like, that was the best place to be as an organization in that environment in late 2007, early 2008, like on the edge of chaos, when you're just about out of control, where you didn't quite know what your folks were doing, was the safest place to be, because the enemy had no chance at knowing that, right? And the fact that you could operate that way and support each other just at the edge of chaos was as safe as you can make it. And I just can't. It's hard to get people to fathom that, I think, sometimes from a risk standpoint and the way we train folks. But I mean, that's where we were at. And I was grateful that we had leaders like Jerry and, Mike Hess, who was platoon leader that entire time. He was, when we were like main effort company a lot of the time, first platoon was towards the end of the mission was like the main effort, like all the time. And Mike put a unfair burden on his back, feel guilty about it to this day. Jerry, you too,
I don't. I don't.
I love Mike. Me and Mike went head to head a couple times, man. I love him though. He was. I saw him after I think he went to Ranger Ranger after or something. But you know
the deal, James. Like every single one of the companies had identities, and and you were really good at being able to place those platoons against the mission set in order to use that identity to the to excellence, right? So and you would also put other platoons in supporting actions for them. So don't sell yourself short, James. Like, you were a really good tactician, good strategic freaking developer for the mission sets that we were executing, man. And you did a really good job, bro. I will say it to this day, you were definitely the best company commander, and you're probably one of the finest officers that I've ever had the distinguished opportunity to serve with, and that pains me because you are a West Pointer.
Yeah. Nobody knows. Hardly anybody knows that. And the number of times I've been called first sergeant and sergeant major, I love it. And it, because Kevin was like having another officer on the team. I know he hates to hear that, but it's like he's probably the smartest one of us. And so it was like, Jerry, you're right there too. So don't even try to pretend. I
was just a lowly platoon sergeant, man. I just did platoon.
But honestly, it was like, and I had guys I had great supporting cast, man. Like, easy. It's like I just sat back and watched the kids go out and play. Is what it felt like towards the end. So, man,
I can't believe, like, when you just talked about the contested infill, I just can't believe we never had a helicopter. The amount of stuff that we were getting shot at, and every time coming in a couple times, hanging my feet out of the U-860 and seeing shit flying up at you. It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, and we did have the El River Valley. I mean, that's the campaign we're talking about. Like, we did have a couple times where guys got wounded in the helicopter. I know Astoria was right next to somebody, HAC, or HHT, I guess, where they took some small arms fire through the into the inside of the CH-47. But we didn't stop the mission. We treated the wounded and kept fucking going.
Yeah, that's who we were.
Dude, you remember when Donkey fell out of the freaking helicopter because of the hard freaking stop? I mean, we continued the mission.
Who was that? Who was that?
Donnelly.
Donnelly, I think. Is it Donnelly's the sergeant major?
No, his career was over at that point. He took
there was one guy that I think might have been Hoxie. One of those guys is a sergeant major.
Oh, Hosky. Hosky, he is.
Yeah, he went to the graduated sergeant major academy under his injuries. Like, he's still graduated. Yes, sir.
I had no idea. Sorry. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know. Saying that to Hoxie.
No, yeah.
Donnelly got medically retired after that, but but going back to what James was saying is, even though shit would happen, we didn't turn it into a Black Hawk Down thing. We just continued on with the mission, got the medevac, got the CASVAC out, and then just Charlie mic'd. Not disparaging the Black Hawk Down folks, because that was a totally different thing, but we never ever let, and I give this to you, James, because you never ever let a disparaging thing stop us from actually executing the mission as it was planned, right?
And I give it all back to Tony Thomas, who taught me that was what right looked like.
Yeah.
175. So it's like, I'm a product of that group more than just about any other group. I mean, I was laughing the other day. I was pointing out, like, that group at, where I walked those live fires, those company commanders, majors, and stuff. Like, I mean, Jim Mingus, just retired Vice Chief Staff of the Army, was our 3. Dave Haight was the XO, 2-star retired. Dan Walrath back on 2. Like Joe Ryan, 4-star. Western Hemisphere Command. Matt McFarland, 3-star, out at I Corps. Greg Anderson, 3-star, 18th Airborne Corps. Those were the captains, majors, and lieutenant colonels that raised me. I'm like 27. John Rafferty, our fire support officer, is the Space and Missile Defense Command right now. 27 stars in 1 battalion. And those, like, imagine just having access to the way they think and train.
Yeah.
Folks, and then being able to take that and put it somewhere else. I mean, that's what makes our Army great. I'm convinced. And like the AWG guys, like, that helped us fill in our gaps. Those dudes had just tremendous wealth of knowledge, and they were humble in the way they brought it for us. And it just, I can't even begin to thank those guys. Dude.
I'd love to get a couple of those guys on the show.
Yeah.
I think that might be doable.
Yeah, I've got a couple in the hopper as well. So.
Yeah. Well, look, I spent like 3 hours, and I'm sure, like, other folks that are going to watch this are like, man, these guys are just, like, droning on at this point and calling La La Land. But it's hard not to, like, me, Kevin, Jerry. I mean, if you guys can say differently, but I mean, I can't think of a time in my life where I felt more at home, more fulfilled, other than with my family now. Like, it's like that, like, this is my Army family. You guys are, and I think about those folks that, that we served with, and I hate myself that I don't connect with them better. And I appreciate, like, Gondo and Fozzie for getting me out of my shell a little bit, because it's a hard story to tell, Chris.
Yeah.
It is, and I get emotional, and I didn't sleep leading into this thing, and I probably won't sleep for like a week afterwards, because it's easy for me to relive these missions. So I can tell you, I mean, I can't tell you LZ names, but I can tell you the battlefield geometry of a lot of these missions. I can tell you about all the times we missed bad guys, and I lose more sleep about the bad guys that we missed than the folks that we accidentally killed. I mean, that's not, might be wrong, but I just that's just where I'm at, but I hope, my hope is that, and I think, me and Kevin talked about this, is like, this is just a starter of the conversation. There's so many more stories to tell about this mission.
Yeah.
Jerry, like, you could probably talk for hours about, I mean, I know Jerry, like, Jerry go in and clear a building, and dudes throwing an IED vest at it, outside at the isolation out the window, and another IED on the stove, cooking on the stove, like fucking, Mission Impossible style, ready to blow up.
And then Lieutenant Branch came by the next day and kicked it. Like,
I know.
Typical lieutenant.
I mean, I mean, these stories that are, I mean, there's just so many of them, and Matt Adamczyk, I know he's doing great things in the Army, and I just would love to see him talk about, losing Keith. I mean, holy cow! Like, me, Keith, Jerry, Matt, all having dinner in the DFAC the night prior to infill. Our company's coming in 24 hours later, watching everything play out, on not being able to do anything about it, watching it on ISR, and then listening to you guys having to deal with it on such a person, losing somebody like, I mean, like, just imagine you're a football team, your MVP just gets, taken out, one of your MVPs gets taken out. I mean, just like, man, these things are impactful stories, Chris. I'm like, I hope, like I said, I hope this is just a starter. I hope you bring in some folks, in later podcasts that are down at the E3, E4 level, and talk about it from their perspective, because I guarantee it's different, but it's worth hearing, and
absolutely,
and they paid just a heavy toll, and it just, I don't want to take, or me and Kevin can't take the credit for all the things. I mean, we couldn't do anything without them.
Yeah,
we all know that, but I want them to tell that, I want them to tell it from their perspective. So just please, hopefully, like I said, I hope this is just the beginning of the conversation, and I'm sure Kevin and I will come back and talk about some specific stuff if you guys want us to. But especially
Yeah,
that
100%.
stuff, because that's a harder story to tell, and I'll gladly lead into that conversation like I've kind of teased a little bit tonight, but it is hard to talk about. But I suffer from depression and anxiety and things like that. My kids pay the price. February rolls around, man. It's hard
Yeah.
month.
November through February is shitty for me, man, from that mission set. So,
Yeah.
I know.
but yeah, Kevin, you got anything you kind of close out or?
Nah, bro. I mean, like I said, man, I just want the guys to know that, they again, I've already said it. Like, I don't want to get overly religious on this, but I was praying for them every single night, man, and I want them to know that.
And I'm sure you still do.
I do.
I know, because I know there's still people out there struggling with this shit.
It's good though, because me and Kevin work right across from each other, so we always we'll sit like look at each other. We'll say, "Hey, remember that day?" And it just helps, man. It's good for both of us. But yeah, all right. I'll start. I'll say something that turn over to Chris. But guys, thank you so much for. I know that was hard. James, like you said, like this isn't. We got Esco in the shoot. You got you can get Diaz in here. You got a bunch of guys that we're really to come on, and this is just a stepping stone, and we can get a little bit more into the details of the mission set as we go forward, and keep it within this battlefield discussion kind of format kind of thing. But like I like it was hard for me on this one too, but to sit here and talk to you guys, I'm getting emotional as I'm trying to close this out, but thank you guys for coming on here and spending time with me. And I haven't seen you, James, in a long time.
Yeah.
And I see Kevin every day at work, but
You're
this meant
so
a lot
blessed.
to me. This meant a lot to me. This meant a lot to the guys. And I know when this gets out, they're going to watch this and, hopefully, it'll bring back some memories, some good memories. I know it's going to bring back some bad memories, but I hope this is the start to tell the story, right? I hope this is the door. The door is now open to tell about Task Force Falcon. So please, guys, come on here and message me and Chris if you want to come on and talk. Man, you are all of you guys that participate in that. Have a seat at the table. I know I've talked to the 82nd Airborne Association executive director. He's an old Task Force Falcon guy. But there's guys that need to come on and tell your story. You guys are truly welcome. And again, Kevin, James, thank you so much. And it is to my heart, it's been an honor to sit here for 3 hours to talk to y'all.
I do got to say one last thing before we pass off to Chris to close out. So just real quick, like when you talk about esprit de corps, it's obvious, like me, you, Kevin, like agree we had it. But I went back down to Charlie Company when I was a battalion commander in White Falcons, and talking to the Casey Bell, the company commander, and he had a picture of our company, like of the snapshot from 2006, 2007, 2008. And he's like, "Sir, do you know that this is the #1 company photo in Pro Images history? Like it has been ordered more times than any other company photo in the history of the 82nd Airborne Division. This snapshot. 06, 08.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hey,
And
so
I don't have a copy of it, so I'm going to get one.
Neither do I. What the fuck?
But I'm just telling you that, like, when they opened it up, like the #1 ordered one over the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hey,
That's
real
awesome.
quick though, guys, for the guys that are wondering out there, because I know you guys are thinking about this, we'll get together sometime. We'll get the reunion going eventually when we can all get our schedules right and we can get all the Charlie Company guys back together, and it'll come. Just be patient, So I know me and Kevin were talking about it a couple years ago, so we'll figure it out. But yeah, we all need to get back together. It'll be a fun time. Chris, you got it, man.
All right, guys. Hey, so for my foxhole, I can't thank y'all enough for coming on. I know from my experience how hard something like this can be, but it's absolutely worthwhile, right? And this is just the beginning of the conversation. So for all our listeners out there, this is not the last you're going to hear of Task Force Falcon. We're going to continue to get James and Kevin on here. I know I personally want to talk really, Series 2 with them. and that is more about what happens after a deployment like this that James kind of talked about with the R4Gen model. And for all our non-Army listeners that might be listening to that, that's the life cycle of a unit. And going kind of into detail there about, okay, you just fought, laughed, cried, bled with your brothers for 16 months, and now you're sent to the four winds. What do you do? Yeah. And so if no other Task Force Falcon comes on to talk about anything, I know that Jerry and I will have them on to talk about that. But having said that, we are going to have some other Task Force Falcon guys on here to talk more about the actual deployment. So that's coming up. For our listeners out there also, please hit that like and subscribe button. That helps us get stories like this out to the broader public, to the family members that may not necessarily know about this, but they need to hear this story, right? That helps us continue to push that further and further so that other people can start to heal. They can hear these stories, they can heal, and they can continue to get better day by day by day. So again, James, thank you. It's been entirely too long since I've seen you, man. Kevin, I couldn't thank you enough for coming on here. Jerry, you suck. You're my best friend. I love you. And I would, there's nobody I would rather do this with. So with that said, that's all I got, guys.
Hey, I'm going to jump on the battalion commander's comments real quick. Just
because he always does. He's always got to have the last comment. So please.
I know, but listen, that's how it runs.
A good sergeant major does.
Yeah. Hey, so I know I've talked to Dodie Callahan, and I know she's willing to come on and getting some of the family members that are associated with Task Force Falcon on, and that's going to be a priority. I know we'll make time to get her on here. So if you're a family member too, reach out to us, and we'll make time to get you on here and tell your story as well. So we want to get that perspective from you guys as well. So that's an invite. So I just want to send that out to you guys. So thank you all again, and then we'll get ready to close this out. So I'm going to hit this button and say, peace out, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.
Good night.